I'm not sure why. I'm adoring listening to Dragnet continue to try to end his hangout. He's shooing people out of his hangout right now. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I'm certainly live. I've been talking for 2 minutes for Dragnet. Yeah. And this time unmuted. Welcome, everybody. Oh, some complaint about there being no... Drag's still talking. That's hilarious to me. Oh, my goodness. No, I can't even talk to you guys. I'm still listening to Drag. You know, I can go back and listen to Drag's his outro. He's having a rather lengthy coda to his hangout there, where he's encouraging people to come over here. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, we do indeed have the fireplace. But you know what I miss? I'm having a bad day here. It is hot, 28 degrees Celsius. I looked it up. I think that's a whopping 83 or 84 on the Fahrenheit scale. It is unpleasant. It is undesirable. I miss. I want a day of this. I want a day where you got to suit up properly and put on the right boots and keep your head covered and just go for a walk. I want that chill in my bones again. Too damned hot. 83, 84 degrees. Nuts. So today in my land is a holiday. For some parts of Canada, in BC, it is somewhat self-aggrandizingly called British Columbia Day. In Alberta, it's even more aggrandizingly called Alberta Heritage Day, the one day a year that we pretend we have culture and heritage in our 100-year-old province. When did we start? 1905. So it's more than 100 years. But I know people in the UK that live in houses that are older than my country, let alone my province. So anyway, welcome everybody. I'm using this holiday to take care of some chores, a couple of business things, get the tax things worked out, because as other Canadians know, everybody thinks, oh, Canadian identity, oh, healthcare, hockey, toques, donuts. No. Real Canadian identity. If you got tax problems, your brother and sister Canadians will identify with you, because we all have tax problems. It's all a game to us. It's all a big cat and mouse game with our governments on the tax things. But I'm getting caught up and getting my business squared away, actually doing it on time this year. And it's been a good year, nice economic turnaround in my part of the country. Spent a little bit of time outside, except it's too hot. Cut down a little tree that was annoying the wife. I don't know, can't explain it. You just, that's just part of a man's job. She tells you to go cut something down. You do it, She's a wonderful gal. She told me to punch a grizzly, I'd do it. And it doesn't even have to have a good reason. Just doesn't like the look of that bear. Just go punch it. Whatever she says, that's what I do. She doesn't need a reason. Kids and I did some other yard tasks and that sort of thing. But the reason why would I summon you? Why would I summon you all here today? I want to do a little dénouement, as it says in the video description, a denouement for those who studied English in 8th grade United States classes. I guess where do I start here today? What had happened? We had a bunch of drama lately, and I think we're kind of done, with the major events of that chapter. I think everybody's hoping that we can kind of go back to our normal lives. Anybody who's got a job should be able to go to their job and not be bothered at their job, and they should be able to come home and do their stupid YouTube videos, and then we should bother them on their stupid YouTube videos. That's kind of how it's been. That's kind of how it should be. I would like to see things return to that. There was some drama about whether this job had ended and then restarted, or when it restarted, or blah, blah, blah. It all went sort of crazy. And I had seen a couple of these videos kind of in doing my kitchen tidying, I don't know, 2 or 3 nights ago. And I thought to myself, I have something to say about this. In the morning, I'm going to get up, I'm going to turn on my computer, and I'm going to do a little support group for people and kind of say, like, why are we doing this? What are we supposed to be doing online? Is this fun? Are you having fun? That sort of thing. And I sort of thought through the little nuggets of advice for what they're worth, and people clearly don't follow my advice. But then I got up in the morning, and I had seen, because of the time difference, the lovely and talented Fiona Robertson had made a video about the sort of the nonsense and the lying and everything else. And then I saw this wonderful video by our friend Nate Brody, MP, multiple personality, and I reshared it. So anybody who follows me would know exactly what I'm talking about. Is he had a chuckle over, well, things kind of blew up for G-Man again. Well, color me surprised. As if it wasn't funny enough, we got another funny step. But then why are we calling his work? What's that about? Can we not do that, please? Can we stop it? And I thought to myself, that's great that Nate Brody made that video, because now I don't have to. I just have to reshare it and say, that guy's on the trolley. That what Nate Brody says was exactly right. Yeah, it's funny. You know, G-Man's life is in turmoil. It's a tumble. He's a crazy person. But, you know, he's got a job. Let the guy have a job. Can we please stop with the calling his work thing? And I thought, yeah, I like that. I'll just reshare it and say that that's what it is. Then we've had a couple days of discussions about how we're not going to talk about these particular individuals anymore. And every time I've had a chance to pop up, I mean, I've been busy with stuff, but I'll pop into a hangout for 5 minutes and I'll say, yeah. Let's stop. Let's just knock it off, you know. And then I'll pop back out. So I've been very vocal of that sort of thing. And yet here I'm going to have a hangout where we're going to talk about some of these things. But let me put it this way. First off, for those who are going to say, oh, but we shouldn't be talking about them, I want to say, yeah, you're not my mother. You guys don't follow my advice. I don't have to follow your advice. So take this hangout in the spirit that it's intended. I have a few thoughts that are going to be sort of in general about lessons learned from this incident, and in the context of things that we ought to have learned from Nephilim Free and from our Gear Up experience and our Sable Chicken experience and our Venom Fang X experience and our The Atheist Antidote experience, and to just keep listing all the various crazy people we've dealt with. And so I want to talk about some of these things today, and I want to keep it shorter than my earlier fireside chats. I'll allude to a couple of points I'd made in there, notably the dead pixie spirit thing, space pixie, whatever it was I said. That's going to come up again. I want to keep that a little bit shorter, and then I want to open the room for a relatively short hangout, hour and a half, you know, and get other people's thoughts on it. And then I'm going to close the hangout. Other people, if you want to hold a hangout, look towards about an hour and a half from now, maybe 2 hours from now, and we will happily move the audience over to your hangout while I go do something else. But yeah, 28 damn degrees. All right, so I think there are some things that I want to say about evangelical apologists. That as sort of a support group tone here, I want to say you need to keep this in mind when you're dealing with them, right? And there's nothing that what I'm saying that is intended to sound overly sage or arrogant in any way. It's just somebody who sort of dealt with these people for quite a while and sort of learned some lessons and understand, you know, everybody's different, but there are some key features you need to be really mindful of when it comes to dealing with the evangelicals. So we'll talk a little bit about their religion. And there are going to be two themes I'm going to touch on a couple of times here. One of them is about hatred. They hate you. If you're not an evangelical, I mean, I'm not saying they hate atheists. They do hate atheists, don't get me wrong. But they hate anybody who isn't one of them. You have to be in their little tight circle. And if you're not, they fear and hate and loathe you. And the second point that I'll touch on a few times is this idea about false witness. This is going to come up a few times here. And as long as I sort of stay on track with that, then I'll wrap up my little blowing snow walk rant here relatively quickly, and we'll bring in some other people. But I do want to say very clearly, they do hate you. This is part of their religion, is contempt for the world, an unquenchable, fiery hatred for the world and every living being in it. They hate everything. They want to not be here. They want to be somewhere else. And they wait for the day. They're waiting, they're pining for the great judgment to where they can be lifted up into heaven, and then they can grin with glee while your renewed body is tortured in all eternity because they hate you, and that's what they want to have happen. Now, there's going to be some important caveats here, because I think very quickly somebody's going to say, oh, Hogtie's saying that this is what Christians believe. Super clear. Let's get this out of the way right away. I'm not talking about Christians. I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm not talking about biblical teachings. I'm not talking about what Jesus Christ taught or what is alleged that he had taught. I'm not talking about the lesson. I am talking about the religion of evangelicalism, which, for clarity, is a radical offshoot from Protestant Christianity. So if you sort of picture Christianity as this branching tree, you have the sort of main core of Christianity coming out of early first century Judaism. And then it's sort of, well, very quickly, there's a couple of branches, but most of those sort of get quelled. And then there's the core of it that's predominantly represented in what is now the Catholic Church. But then there's that major offshoot of the Protestant Reformation. And then the Protestants variously fraction off. And now, in the last, like partway through the 20th century, is when you see radical evangelicalism, where their religion is based on hatred for the others. Their religion is based on us versus them, on those who are truly in Christ, which would represent probably less than 0.5% of the world's population. And actually, in their own circles, it usually only represents about 5 people. It's really interesting, like how you can even get, like, you know, this group of evangelicals will see another group of radical evangelicals as being outsiders. They're always very small, close-knit groups. It's these one-man ministries. The idea that you don't need to study the Bible, that all you need to do is be, you don't need to absorb information from extra biblical writings. You don't need to. It's not even sola scriptura. It is solo only. I say solo or seulement. Only my view of what the Bible says. In their view, anybody can pick up the Bible. And as long as you believe, as long as your heart is in Christ and Christ is in your heart, you can flip through the Bible. That is what your religion is going to be. You're now a minister. You can go out and start to preach the word, and your word is the word of God. Now, they're sometimes subject to change. They will sometimes revise a position based on enough strong input from other people they trust. But I just really want to make this point clear, because there's no way I can overstate it. I'm not talking about Christianity. I'm not talking about Christians. I'm not talking about followers of Jesus Christ. I'm talking about these radical evangelical one-man ministries, us versus them, hatred of the others, the atheists, the Muslims, the Catholic, the Mormons, anybody who isn't one of them. They have genuine deep hatred for them. The second point I would make about their religion is they are taught to express love. They are taught to express a rejection of hatred. So this opening on my part is always going to be something you're going to find contentious, because as soon as you say, oh, well, they hate people who aren't in their in-group, they'll say, no, oh, it shows what Hogtie knows about Christianity, and then they'll flip through the Bible, and they'll find a passage where Christ said not to hate. They'll flip through and they'll find a passage where Christ said, oh, you have to love everyone. Okay, great. You can say that you love everyone. You've got a totally different definition of love than every other human being on the planet. And they'll even tell you, oh, well, there's different types of love, and they'll give these definitions. But they will through every observable evidence out there, everything in their behavior, you can see and feel their persistent, consistent hatred for everybody else. And they will ice that cake with the words, oh, but I don't hate these people. I love those people. You know, I hate the sin, and I love the sin, and I hate the sinner. Man, that's like the 4th time I've gotten that backwards when I say it out loud. It's I hate the sin and love the sinner, is what they'll say. But they don't love the sinners. They don't love the people who they see as outside their group. When you first enter into a friendship with them, they are very, very happy. They're very enthusiastic at the opportunity to bring you into a love for Christ. And as soon as they get frustrated by their failure to do so, then their hatred comes out. And again, they will say, but we don't hate, but we don't hate. So I want to illustrate, let me just interrupt myself a little bit to tackle this idea of hate the sin and love the sinner. And you see why I keep getting it backwards, because sometimes I say love the sinner, hate the sin, and then sometimes I only switch 2 of the words and I end up getting exactly the backwards message. But you've heard them say it. So it goes something like this. Let's do a little thought experiment in the notion about hating the sin but still loving the sinner. And I want to tell you about a fellow that lives on the sort of the western end of the city I live in, and he's somebody I had met through work, and it came like, so I will now tell you of this person. I won't give you his name, but I will now tell you of this person, that he is a pedophile. He has his strict sexual attraction is for children only, young children, sort of in the 4 to 9 range. And not only does he have that as his attraction, but he acts on it. So he, does things like, becomes scout leaders and things like that. And he gets into these situations where he can bring children closer to him. And he's offended a number of times. And at one point, he was on trial for multiple allegations where there was some evidence, but there was a problem at trial, and he ended up not getting convicted. So he actually has never been convicted of it, but not because there wasn't evidence, but because of a procedural problem. So he's out free, and he lives in the West End of my city. Just for simplicity of the conversation, I'll tell you his first name is Dennis. Okay, so Dennis, this is what I know of Dennis. And I'll tell you this of Dennis, and I mean, is it really my business to tell you about this person's habits or his legal problems? And I can say, well, but I really want to tell you this because it's important to me that people know about this so that they don't put their own children in circumstances with Dennis, because the guy's a predator, right? Now, can I say this of Dennis and then say, oh, look, I hate the sin, but I love the sinner? If I were to say to you, I love Dennis, I hate his sin, and I don't want him to keep engaging in this. And just take a moment for this thought experiment and say, does it make sense for me to have told you this about Dennis and at the same time tell you that I love Dennis? And because I love the sinner, but I hate the sin. Now, I've actually used this as an example in the past, and in previous experience with it, I've heard many people say, oh yeah, it's possible to still love the person. We all have a family member that just does horrible things, to get drunk and beat their kids, but you still want them to be, you don't want them to suffer. You just want them to not do that bad thing anymore. So I get the sentiment of, I hate the sin, but I love the sinner. I get that. And I have people, both Christians and evangelicals, I can sort of see the sentiment. I think it's sometimes hard to do that, but I get it. I've had a minority of these evangelical radicals say, well, I could do that, but you can't because you're an atheist, which is the stupidest thing that a person could say, where they're saying it's within human capacity to hate the sin and yet still love the sinner. But somehow that capacity is something that is blessed only upon the real Christians, and yet somehow other human beings are incapable of this. Right. So this is the answer that I've heard. So whatever your answer may be, and actually, since I'm sort of asking a rhetorical question, I'll just do a pop out chat, and I'll take a look and see if other people are saying this, about if they have an answer about this. But okay, I want to add a little bit more information about the story about Dennis. Okay. And in doing so, I need to remind you it's a thought experiment. Remember that when I described his activity and his criminal behavior and stuff, I didn't say that he actually did those things. I'm saying I will tell you that he has, done this stuff with children. I will tell you that he has been on trial for this, but he was acquitted through, his case was thrown out. But let me tell you a couple more facts about this. None of that stuff actually happened. Dennis is just some guy that I used to be a coworker with, but I had problems with him at work. We never really got along, right? He's just somebody that every turn, something that was going on, he was always in my way. He always caused problems for me at work. And I just had my fill of this guy. And then I later discovered that behind my back, he was having an ongoing sexual relationship with my wife. And when I stepped in on this situation, I'm very angry. And I never want to see this guy again. That I've worked it out with my wife, but it still bothers me that this happened. Okay, now for clarity, let me parenthetical comment here. Please, people, this is a thought experiment, okay? I don't know any Dennis. This was not a coworker of mine. He's not slept with my wife. It's not somebody who's nothing to do with the children. Okay, this is a thought experiment. So I'm saying now, think of this hypothetical Dennis, where you've known that I've told you about his kitty fiddling, and I've told you about his. I was just checking to see if I was unmuted. I thought this would be the longest that I've gone talking while I was still muted at the beginning of a Hangout. So I've told you this stuff about Dennis. Dennis, a completely made up person, totally hypothetical. And then you scratch the surface and you find out, no, he was never on trial for this. He was never accused of it. There's no indication he's ever done anything with kids. You meet him, he's a nice enough person. And, he did this one thing that you might not like. He was engaged in this, found, oh, well, he actually had this thing with Hogtie's wife. And Hogtie didn't like it. So now what you know of the situation is that there's this guy named Dennis who isn't guilty of being a pedophile. He's got nothing to do with that stuff. I'm saying these untrue statements about him because I want you to hate him, right? And you know that I have these incentives, that I'm upset because of this, again, the thought experiment, right? Now I want you to think on my phrase, oh, I love Dennis. I hate the sin, but I love the sinner. Is it possible, and this is a genuine question I put out here. I know it comes across as matter of rhetoric, but I mean this literally. I want you to answer this question, at least in your own mind. Is it possible that I actually love Dennis in of the very I love Dennis in any sense, and yet at the same time I would knowingly go out and spread a lie about him that is false witness, that is defaming false witness, like truly damaging. I want to gut this person socially. I want him to suffer, and I love him. Is that something that's possible at all? And I would hope, and I see a few no's go by in the live chat, I would hope that you agree with me. This is not a defensible position. You cannot engage in hurtful, defamatory speech against another person. You cannot bear false witness against them. You can't say these things that you know are intended to make that person's life miserable, and at the same time claim to love that person. I could say I love him, and I can say I don't hate him, but if you were now describing my attitude towards Dennis, like later if you met somebody who didn't know me or know Dennis, and you say, "Oh, what's the thing?" You would say, for shorthand, you would say, "Oh, don't worry about that. Hogtie hates Dennis," right? Isn't that what you would say? It doesn't matter. You wouldn't color it with, "Oh, well, Hogtie says he doesn't hate him. Hogtie says he loves him," but it's pretty clear that Hogtie actually hates this guy, right? That's what you would say. So this is my illustration for when I say that the radical evangelicals hate you. If you're a Catholic, they hate you. If you're LGBT, they hate you. If you're an atheist, they hate you. The reason I say that is because these individuals will think nothing of saying the most vile, atrocious things about any one of us. And if you think I'm going too far by saying that they will accuse people of being pedophiles, let's remember that the drum that G-Man's been beating lately, he's so upset because Dragnut did something, which we can get into that, but G-Man's saying, and he's upset with Ms. Starr, and he's upset with all these other people. So what does he say? He goes after this Boom fellow, which I kind of remember. I kind of remember I remember seeing his icon, and I think I remember his voice. But they're saying G-Man's saying, okay, initially the story comes out that he had done a thought experiment in a public hangout where he talked about the difference between being a pedophile, that is someone who's sexually attracted to children, versus being a child molester, which is somebody who engages in sexual interference of children, whether or not they're a pedophile. There are many people out there who are not pedophiles, but they are child molesters. It's a crazy thing. We can get a whole discussion about that if you want. The point is, he was engaging in that discussion, engages in this thought experiment. And then there may or may not have been additional discussions where he'd admitted to other people that he's one of those people, that he has sexual interest in children, or at least in teenage girls, so he'd be a hebephile or whatever. I don't know if any of those conversations happened. I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is he's done nothing within in this community for the longest time. He's just an atheist, the way that therefore who represents all of us. And he'll dig deep in the neighbors or more, and well, this guy has admitted to being a pedophile. And then G-Man escalates. You just listen to the escalation over the last week or so. G-Man initially says he is a pedophile, and then he says he's admitted to being a pedophile. And then G-Man says people have a recording of him admitting to be a pedophile. And then G-Man says, G-Man says, I have a recording of him admitting to be a pedophile. Audio cutting out? Is that for real? Really? That's such a good rant here. Let me know how my sound is now. Let's just give it a couple of seconds to settle out. The sound any better now? All right. Well, I'll repeat that. G-Man says that G-Man then claims that G-Man himself has, let me just try to move it to another room here. So I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to go on a little walk. Come with me. It'll be fun. Come on along with me. A little closer to the router. I've been meaning to lift the router up into a different place to get radio waves and stuff. So G-Man says that other people have recordings of him admitting Boom admitting to being a pedophile, and then G-Man says that G-Man has recordings of this guy admitting to being a pedophile, and then he takes it that extra 9 steps further. A few days ago, he says, "I," meaning G-Man, "I have a recording of Boom talking to a child and setting up a sexual thing with this child." Right? This is what G-Man now tells people. 2 weeks ago, G-Man didn't have this recording. 2 weeks ago, G-Man makes no mention of it. 2 weeks ago, G-Man says that he thinks he heard something about maybe this guy said something about a pedophile. And then it just escalates. Now he tells us that G-Man has in his personal collection an audio recording of this guy having a conversation with a child for the purpose of setting up a sexual encounter. And you know what? Give it another 2 days, because then G-Man's going to claim to have like a videotape of this guy and a kid, and some sort of Chris Hansen type, oh, I caught the kid and whatever, right? So my example of, falsely accusing somebody of being a child molester is not that far off, because what says move the video? You are cutting out move the video. What does that mean? Move the video. I don't know what that means. What we can do here? Let's just stop screen share for a moment here. Let's let the old Google tubes catch up on this here. So it's really that bad. So when they say we love people, but we but then they bear this false witness, don't ever be fooled by it. So I don't want to retread all the discussions that's happened lately. I just sort of wanted to illustrate that in generality, because we'd been through this with Nephilim Free, where he just once, like, Neff used to really be an open, approachable guy. You could go in and talk to him. He'd come into our Voxley room, and really approachable, nice guy. And then once things started to get embarrassing for him, he turned just crazy, dark, and evil, right? Gear Up very briefly went through a phase where he just went loony and started saying the craziest shit about people. Then he said, that's it. He threw up his hands and he didn't make another YouTube video again. And I don't know him. I know his sister. Through her, I've heard he is a much happier fellow now that he hasn't done it. Then you got Jason Burns fellow who is, by all accounts, a really nice guy. Went through a period. It was always very approachable. Continues to be very approachable, but went through a period here where he went through some pretty awful things and said some really awful stuff about people. Nobody believed him in any of the stuff that he said, but still, he just turned that way. And to this day, he's like, well, I kind of wish I hadn't done that. And now he's happier not doing this stuff. And you know what? So now we have our new crop of people. We've got our G-Man and our True Empiricism that are doing that now. And not to speak of it in generalities, because this is one of my beefs about them, by the way, is that they will say, oh, well, just Dragnut's a liar, Dragnut's a liar, Hogtie's a liar. Okay, well, give me an example. Just give me an example. For more than 3 years now, I've been asking True Empiricism to back up his claim that I'm a liar, which he could substantiate. Give us one example. Give us an example of a lie. Every time I ask him, he goes, I have a video on my channel where I prove that you lied. Okay, what was the lie? Now, to say that you have proof that somebody lied, I can grant that there may be layers to how you'd have to present that, so that if somebody, if I tried to say, well, Dragnut's a liar, for example, and then they said, well, prove that, and I said, well, okay, first I'll summarize for you what the lie was. Dragnut says that he was just, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of a lie he might tell, but I was going to use like a von Helton caliber lie. We use a spy or something. I don't know, whatever. It has to be something that we can prove. But you know what I mean? If you can very quickly, if you say that somebody's lying about something, you can very quickly summarize the lie. You can say, he says X, but in fact, not X. Y is the case. Now, you might come back on me and say, well, you need to prove to me that he said X. And second, you need to prove to me that not X, but Y is actually the case. Prove to me those two things, so I at least know that he said something that was untrue. If you really want to be sticky, you can say, prove to me that he said X incorrectly, with the knowing intent to deceive people, right? So there can be stuff that you want, if you say to prove that somebody lied, but you know, Ronnie like does a belly flop right out of the gate, right? He can't even tell you an example of a lie. He still can't, after 3 years of me asking this, he cannot tell you. He can't say Hogtie said this, but in fact that was the case. You want to ask me for an example of a lie that he told? I'll lean back in my chair and I'll say, oh, yeah, he said that Francis Crick was the one who coined the phrase uh, sequential specified information. And I could list like 6 or 7 different things that he's lied about. But let me give you some recent ones, because this is a more relevant lie. It's the bearing false witness. The thing that really annoyed the shit out of me in their hangouts recently is their repeated insistence to go to, oh, well, Hannah Zubby hacked G-Man's phone. Are you serious? Like, one of the problems, and this is sort of the third thing I want to say about dealing with evangelicals, is that when they form a friendship, a tight group within their in-group, it will surpass reality. It will be absolutely impenetrable to facts. They will cheerfully lie to each other, and they will accept each other's lies as true, unquestioningly. And I'll give an example of this, is that, okay, so it's well established, you know, G-Man admits this himself, true empiricism knows this to be the case, Veckel knows this to be the case, Antonio knows this to be the case. G-Man's been really sloppy with his information. He's doc dropped his residence several times as he's moved from place to place. Everybody's known where he lived because he always shows the outside of it. He's doc dropped his employer. Everybody knows where he works. Everybody knows where he lives. And oh my God, knows what his real name is. Like, oh, please, it's so well out there. So this is well established. And then when G-Man says, well, how did they find, the only person I told my workplace to was Psychopath Atheist. So therefore, Psychopath Atheist was the one who told people. He just said it. He just put it out there. That's how people know about it, was because Psychopath Atheist said it. He doesn't think for a second that there might be another means that they got this information, especially when people have been writing to him and pointing out, dude, you just showed your workplace again. What is wrong with you? Take that video down. But then, it got out somehow. Oh, must have been Psychopath Atheist. Lately, he's been saying there are only 3 people on YouTube. Hannah Zubby, MP, that's Nate, and who's the third fellow? Well, it must have been one of those 3. Had to have been one of those 3. Nobody else could have told him, even though before he comes out to make the statement about this where he lived thing, several people had written to him or told him in hangouts or through other means told him that you have shown your house. People know where you live because you just showed your house. And then when people know where he lives, he goes, oh, it had to have been one of those 3 people. Hannah, MP, I can't remember who the third one was. That's weird. It slipped my mind. Doesn't matter, because then he says, well, it must have been one of them. And then he's quite sure that it was Hannah. And then at the same time, Hannah told people that, according to G-Man, Hannah Zubby told people G-Man's address because she hacked his phone. Well, why the fuck did she have to hack his phone if he told her where she lived? And incidentally told everybody else on the fucking internet, because he spins the camera around when he's standing outside his house. Right? Like, it's just crazy. Let me clarify that for you. 8-bit NES cutscene. No, G-Man is blaming Psycho now. No. G-Man was blaming Psycho a year and a half ago or so, when G-Man had, for the second time, doxed his own store by going out in the street and spinning his camera around. People went, oh, so he works at this appliance place. And people told him, take that video down, all that stuff. But then a few days later, when people were kind of joking about this appliance place, he says, oh, it must have been Psychopath Atheist. And he was 100% sure it was Psychopath Atheist. Now, apparently, those two had spoken about it in private, and there may have been an apology, may have been forgiveness. I don't know, whatever. That's not the point. The point is that he just says that stuff. He just comes out and he says this stuff. So Hannah has both been given G-Man's address by G-Man and also hacked his phone. And then, well, how did they know he was back at work? Oh, well, because Hannah hacked his phone and they're tracking his GPS and blah, blah, blah. And he's got all these crazy stories about it, always coming back to, it's Hannah's fault. Now, what did Hannah do to draw his ire? She's been very, very consistent. She's been a good friend to him. Some would say she's been polite to G-Man to a fault. And I would be one of those people to point out, when you're friends with somebody, sometimes you got to tell them, you're full of shit. You got to be supportive of them. You don't have to tear them down, but you do have to tear down their harmful fantasies. And I don't know that Han is really aggressive in doing that, but she's very, very tolerant and accepting of G-Man's nonsense. And she's been really good, very, very compelling in telling us, look, she doesn't share that information with people. And yet she's just the worst person in the world, because she was G-Man's target to be the next person to fall to her knees, repent her sins, and come to Christ, and dedicate her entire YouTube channel to preaching the gospel message. And she didn't do it. That is Hannah poising a knife at G-Man's back. And then the first time that she disagreed with G-Man about anything, that was her stabbing him in the back. And that's his phrase for the way Hannah treats him. She stabbed him in the back. Same for MP, stabbed him in the back. So there's also, they just, and the thing is, they can say that stuff of Hannah. It's not just G-Man saying it because he's a crazy person. He will say that in front of True Empiricism and Antonio and Veckel. And they'll go, yep, Hannah's a crazy bitch. They just completely go along with it because they don't love her. They hate her because G-Man just says, well, she's upsetting me, so you should hate her. Great, you hate her. Now, give me 5 more minutes here, and I'll throw the doors open so people message me for the link. I'll start by throwing it into the drag chat thing. But I think you see where I'm going with this. They've persisted in this false witness, including this thing about Hannah being a hacker. They've also persisted in saying that Hannah and Annabelle and Gus Belanger engaged in a fraud to scam money from people, something that has been shown to them to be simply not true. And that's how hateful they are of people like Gus Belanger. They cannot look at Gus's circumstances and say, that's unfortunate that someone's in those circumstances. How can I help? What they do is they look at G-Man's circumstances and they say, well, he hates Gus Belanger, so I better hate Gus Belanger. Oh, he's saying that Gus Belanger engaged in a fraud, so I'm going to say Gus Belanger engaged in a fraud. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about what's good or bad for people, except for, well, this is what G-Man says, so this is what it is. Now, and I want to get to this point here too, is they remember they will lie to each other, and they will happily receive each other's lies. So I want to use one illustration there, and that is, if you listen to G-Man had one recently, was what is it called? G-Man versus the World. Come on in and tell me how I'm wrong. And of course, he just kicks people out right away. I did something in that hangout that I've never done as a YouTuber. I can't say that I regret it, because in my mind it was this is what G-Man gets from me. I thought that when Gus Belanger went in and showed, so G-Man's in there accusing Gus Belanger of committing a fraud. Gus goes in, turns his camera on and says, look at me now, bitch. This is what the truth is. And then he gets thrown out. I wanted to go in and make the very single point. G-Man, you said Gus wasn't in the hospital. Gus is in the hospital. You're not here saying, oh, I guess I was wrong about that. So suck it, bitch. You're caught out. You're caught out lying. And what do his friends say? What do his friends say? As soon as I left, True Empiricism said, oh, you see how he's running from the context. I don't know how somebody's running. Like, what the fuck does that phrase even mean? That's such a Ronnieism. Poisoning the, was it muddying the waters to poison the well? Just gibberish phrases. But he's saying that basically, I think what he's saying is I'm ignoring the context. And then he says nothing. What's the context? He says, oh, he's running from the context. Okay, what was the context? The context was G-Man made 2 videos where the entire video of each was dedicated to laying out a criminal fraud perpetuated by Annabelle, by Hannah Zubby, and by Gus Belanger, including explicit statements that Gus Belanger was not in a hospital. Gus Belanger has showed him that he is in the hospital. And what's G-Man's response? Well, it's Ronnie going, oh, well, what the context? Okay, well, what context salvages that? Your friend was just caught out lying. Within 5 minutes of that, they were still going back on Hannah commits these frauds, Gus commits these frauds. They left Annabelle out of it, but I mean, he's already calling Annabelle a slut and a whore and whatever other disgusting names. He's slut shaming her, even though there's no evidence that she's a slut or merits any shame for her sexual choices. But there they are. They just hate these people. They hate these people. In that same hangout, there's a delightful moment, and I want to wrap up on this anecdote, and then we can sort of open it up. I think I've set the context here again about hatred and about false witness, because actually, I want to caption it with this. What they're forgetting is that a lot of this, there are things that we've done wrong on our side. Actually, sorry, that's one point I really have to make. There are things that we've done wrong on our side. I don't make the claim that everybody else, on my side, has acted perfectly. We've gone out and shot off our mouths and made statements that we shouldn't have made. It doesn't happen nearly as, I mean, they get together and they pat each other on the back, and they concoct, and they fabricate whole cloth these bullshit lies. Whereas the worst of us will run off sort of half-cocked and say something that's wrong, and then later other people have to go, "Oh, I guess it's not true." Yeah, actually, let me do that first. Is the job loss thing? So there was a bunch of drama the other day about, oh, I guess G-Man's at his job, and I popped in a couple of hangouts. I won't repeat this at length because then people would have heard me say it. But basically, I'm saying we don't know what happened with G-Man's job. I think it very unlikely if G-Man were actually a sort of on the books employee, that his employer would have fired him and then waited a week or two and then said, yeah, come on back, and then rehired him. Very difficult thing to do. You have to, to prepare the termination papers, issue a record of employment, giving notice to the taxation authorities. I mean, this is firing an employee is a lot of paperwork. Hiring an employee, doing the sign-on package is a lot of paperwork. No one's going to do that. Just doesn't make sense. However, there in G-Man's state, they can do day labor arrangements where they pay them in cash, and the appropriate source deductions are made, and the government's just sent an amount for that, and they're not actually an on-the-books employee. There's nothing illegal about that. And of course, in his state, there's a lot of just plain old paid under the table employees. That is illegal, but whatever, that's their business. They're doing whatever they're doing. I don't care about that. Under either of those last two circumstances, either day labor arrangement or under the table payments, that boss could say, look, I don't want you here anymore. And then they could bump into each other in the street, and he could say, well, we'll give it another try. And then he can come back for a day and then be sent out again and then be called back, right? If he wasn't an on the books employee, yes, I can see G-Man have been sent away for a week until the boss cooled down about it and wanted him back on a trial basis, had him come in for an hour, which, doesn't even make sense to me, because where I am, if you call an employee and you have to pay them for a minimum of 3 hours, you don't call somebody in for a 1-hour shift, but whatever. If he's being paid under the table and his boss gave him $8 cash for Thursday, whatever. That's all their business. This is none of our business. When it came to calling the store that Saturday, I think there's an argument can be made for investigative journalism. We just check the store to see if he's working there. I don't like that argument. I sort of see why somebody would do it once for that reason, and I could see that as a justification. It is not a justification that would rise to my standard. I still don't think we should be calling the store. I don't care. I mean, I do care if G-Man was fired or wasn't fired or whatever. I'm saying it's none of my business. I'm not going to lift a finger to investigate that, nor do I think you should. And I've been very vocal about this, and many other people have been vocal about this. Stop calling his workplace. Don't do anything to contact people where he lives. Don't contact his neighbors. Don't talk to the police unless you have strong evidence of a specific crime being committed. Even then, you probably don't. So just leave it alone. Just bug the guy on YouTube. I've said this over and over again. A number of people have said this over and over again. But what do we hear in response about this? Oh, those atheists are calling his workplace. Those atheists are doing this. Those atheists are doing that. I'm not doing this. You keep me out of it. So notice that their hangout they had a couple days ago, specifically mentioned in there was Redline. True Empiricism has left comments saying Redline and his friends have been calling G-Man's workplace. That's a lie. It's false witness. It is on its face. It's simply not true. But Ronnie knows it too. So it is intentional, effortful, on purpose, hateful, malicious false witness. And not a surprise. Not a surprise to anyone, because that's just what they do. So let me real quick go back to I want to say one thing about how they lie to each other, because there's a moment that happened in that G-Man versus the world thing. Go back and listen to it. It's worth your attention because it's such a goofy moment. There's a point in there Oh, jungle jargon. Hold on, I'm going to interrupt myself for this. Oh, jungle jargon, you're adorable. Atheists don't have any rules to follow. Yes, we do, jungle jargon. You want to come in and talk about it? I'll happily have you come in and talk about it. Um, this was actually one of the points I was going to include in my rant, but I wanted to keep it shorter, so I dropped it. But it was when you know that you've caught a radical evangelical pulling some shit, and he knows he's caught out doing some shit, they're going to say things like, "Oh, but you don't have a basis for your morality," or, you know, we had to answer to a higher power. Jungle jargon, jungle jargon, jungle jargon, jungle jargon. Listen carefully. Here's the thing: I have a basis for my morality. I can express it and I can show you that it's something that's real. I can describe to you the the foundation for my moral reasoning. And now, jungle jargon, just take it easy. Take it easy. Here you go. Jungle jargon, you ready for this? You do not have a basis for your morality. Your whole concept of moral reasoning is completely detached from accountability. Your quote unquote moral system is one that says that you cannot be held accountable for anything. Your view is that accountability is not at all an important component in moral reasoning. I can argue about accountability. I can show my accountability. You actually argue aggressively for a system that has no accountability. You do not believe in perfection, jungle jargon. You believe that you can be imperfect and you will not be judged for your imperfections. Someone will stand in your place so that you and your imperfections will not be held accountable. You want to talk about that sometime? I don't know that you can rise to that level to actually have a real discussion about moral reasoning, but keep that in mind about, I don't just mention it for jungle jargon. This is one of the things that people, I dropped this item off my list, but I think now it's actually relevant. I think once they start saying, well, you don't have a base for your morality, you know that they know they're caught doing some shit. And always remember, you have a basis for your moral reasoning. Their entire foundation of morality is based on the concept of there being zero accountability. There is no right, there is no wrong. Their view is that humanity is to be split into two groups of people. On the one hand, you've got dirty, disgusting, evil sinners who will burn forever. And the other group is dirty, evil, disgusting sinners who will get eternal reward. That's their view of the world. It doesn't matter if you littered and they've murdered 1,000 people, murdered and eaten 1,000 people. You will burn forever for your littering because you're judged by your imperfections. They and their 1,000 cannibal murders will have someone stand in their place and they will not be held accountable. That is the radical evangelical moral view. That is what they tell us about their own moral reasoning. How do we think that they can actually be moral people when that is their best face forward on their moral reasoning? All right, I'm going to throw the link out there, and I will give you one little anecdote on the way. There's a delightful moment in that hangout where, now you might remember that one of the accusations going around about G-Man was that he quote unquote locked a child in the store, and G-Man denies this. And in talking with where is it here? This is my join link. Kapow. There's a delightful moment in that hangout when one of the guys who hadn't heard this accusation had said, "Well, what's this about now?" And G-Man says, "Well, here's what happened. Let me tell you what happened." Okay, this is honestly how G-Man starts the story. And in now you need to remember what happened, right? So actually, let me say, I'll tell you what he says happened. Sorry, I'm juggling tasks here, people. But it's a delightful moment. They said, "Well, what happened?" He goes, "Well, it was closing time at the store, and I tried to clear it out, but then I was looking around, and then I started closing the store, but then there was a kid, so I had to send this kid out." You need to go listen to that hangout to listen to how bullshit watered down, brown watered. People say watered down. G-Man brown watered this one, right? G-Man told them, oh yeah, it was at closing time, and I started closing, but then there was a kid in the store, and I was like, well, there's a kid in the store. Oh, I better let this kid out before I close. You need to listen to his weasel slapdick retelling of the story. And as you do, remember that there on 2 of G-Man's channels, there is a video, something like Trolls Called My Job, Trolls Got Me Fired, whatever it is. And this is a video that Antonio has watched, and this is a video that True Empiricism has watched. It's unclear whether or not Veckel has seen the video. But in that video, you hear G-Man yell, why are you calling my job? Why are you calling my job? That one. And then you see G-Man talking to his customer, and he's like, we're closed. G-Man has the keys in his hand, goes out to the front. You hear the chicka, 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 the roll shutters closing. That is to say, he locked the store. It's 3 p.m. when this happens. And then you hear him come back, and then a minute later, you hear this kid, hey, mister, what are these blue barrels for? That is to say, there was a child in the store. He locked the store. There was a child in the store. He locked a child in the store. So the story that he locked a child in the store is 100% true, based only on the evidence on G-Man's own channel, which True Empiricism has seen and Antonio Fletcher has seen. It's unclear whether Veckel has seen it or not. But I can understand. See, this is the thing. If G-Man were a normal person, he would have said something along the lines of, well, what happened is I got this crank phone call, so I was closing the store to deal with this call, and I didn't realize there was a kid in the store, so I locked the store with this kid still in the store. But they're making it sound like I kidnapped this child, which is ridiculous. You know how these atheists exaggerate. If G-Man would have said that, I would have got some buy-in there. But that's not what he said. He goes, oh, well, it was closing time. I just had to close the store, and people who saw the video and knew G-Man was being accused of locking a child in the store, had in fact locked a child in the store. They listened to G-Man say, oh, it was at closing time, which they knew that not to be the case, and that he hadn't locked the child in the store, but he was about to lock the store, and he found the child before he locked the child in the store. So therefore, all atheists are liars. And what was their response with them knowing, having seen the evidence themselves? They went, yeah, G-Man, those atheists sure are liars. Well, subjective, arbitrary, subjective. We have very familiar shadow heathens, 13 heathens, goes by various names. You know them, you love them. Probably on some book or something. Sabella, the famous, infamous, the one that people used to call Stabella. And now I guess maybe they're starting to do that again because what have you done wrong in your life, Sabella? That one thing. And so we're going to keep talking about that, apparently, if you're an evangelical Christian who hates Sabella. She asked for 1 sec. Pew Review. Oh, my goodness, he's done good stuff lately. And Cliff Jumper, getting a lot of praise lately for sitting down attentively and watching that video to count the number of, let me give you a little bit of feedback real quick, Cliff. You counted the number, I'll come back to you in a second. And then there's Christopher, which you're in Hangouts, and I'm sure you do interesting stuff in your life. I want to give you a word of praise, but I don't know who you are. I'm sure your mom is proud of you. I don't know what to say to the guy. You're cool. You typed some good comments on the side. Subjective, arbitrary, suggestive. That was, you actually tipped me off towards the end there. Cliff Jumper, let me say to you first, and I'm just going to throw it over and people can talk. You made that video where you tallied up. What were the 2 categories in your tally?
There were 3. There was how many threats, how many doxings, and how many threats of violence.
Okay. In my view, there ought to have been number of demonstrable lies. Except for that display field, you would have had to set it for double precision floating point notation because you couldn't have done it in the.
Actually, I have it on fairly good authority that he actually did have a counter for that, but it blew up before the end of the video.
Yeah, so well, it'd go on overflow. At one point, it would go all 9s, and then it would go like all Fs or all -9. It'd be all, computers have problems with ridiculously large numbers like that.
My Aspie attention to detail had me sort of say, you know what? There are so many gratuitous threats here that there should be, I should just keep a list because that adds gravity to the amount of threatening and just hate that was in there. And so that's what made me decide to do the counter.
I actually took it and
And then
considered
I
doing a
added the other
remix with the 7 Deadly Sins.
Yeah, then
Okay.
I added the others to go with it.
Okay, well, I'm going to step away for a moment just to resist the temptation of keeping to overtalk you guys, as I just done a cliff jumper. But I want to remind you guys again. I want to sort of get us back on track, and I definitely let myself wander back into the whole G-man true empiricism. I mean, certainly comment on things that I'd said or other things that are on your mind while you're listening, whatever else, and you go ahead and mention their names. I know starting today, we're not going to talk about them anymore. But I really do not want to just have it go into another session of like I didn't even mention the doc dropping, because everybody knows about it, whatever. But let's not try to do a 4-hour hangout in which we just recount all the things that have been discussed in other hangouts. We know the specific things these guys have done. I tried to throw in a couple things that people weren't familiar with, but yeah, let's get it out of our system. But let's try to keep our minds towards the horizon, where we're just going to talk about the generality of how this is what happens when you think that they're actually your friends. It doesn't even have to be these particular
I don't know.
guys.
I mean, when I did my call out videos, part of it was, just after not paying attention to him for years, I went and looked, and here's this person has absolutely nothing but hate and disdain for everyone. This person that's consumed by his hatred for his fellow man. And, I actually kind of felt bad for him, because I'm thinking, okay, here's somebody that's always going to be miserable in his life because this is what his focus is. And I actually, in part, was trying to reach out to him out of pity, because that's no way to live your life. I mean, he's never going to, so to speak, get the girl and settle down and yada, 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 if he's just this wretched human being.
Oh my goodness. So sorry,
So that was a secondary motive, but yeah.
I've been told now that I am one of the Ridgeways.
Dude, you're a little far from your base, man.
Shit. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay,
so I missed the last like 10 or 15 minutes because as I was cleaning up and getting ready to go meet another YouTuber and go eat dinner, I get a message from Shani saying that she knows I'm one of the Ridgeways because, get this, one of them went on one of her streams and said that he was me.
Okay.
Are you fucking serious?
I literally said, Shani, you can't be this fucking dumb. And then she said, yes, I am. So, okay, well,
Okay, well, I'm going to clue some people in on some things. There is actually a secret cabal. Actually, sorry, I refer to it as a secret cable that drags kind of on the periphery of. He's kind of one of our, we'll just call him one of the bonus members.
Yeah. Hey guys, one thing I want to do.
But this little group has nothing to do with the damn Ridgeways, and none of them are Ridgeways, so.
Yeah, I'm going to step away for a bit. Let me just a couple of moderation notes here. So, let me say in terms of other people, anybody who has done doc dropping, anybody who has done calls to people's workplaces, they don't need to be in this hangout. So don't share the link with
no Garys.
I mean mostly no G-man. But yeah,
That too.
Yeah, that too. Sorry, and there's one thing I forgot to say. An Asaka account ought to be invited specifically. I gotta say, of the things when I was listing, and I sort of just looking over my list here of things that little specific events I wanted to mention. I really wanted to mention that thing about the thank you, Pew. And by the way, there's somebody who came in. That's last name. I don't know who that was. I was trying to check out his or her channel. Don't know what the heck that was about. Let's try to be. Yeah, it's okay. You can figure it out. But it's one thing I do want to say is I want to help my kids for a second.
Hey,
I'm just gonna go check on them I'll be away for a few minutes. So I'm gonna give some moderation notes. But one thing I forgot to mention is that in the recent thing with the whole calling the workplace and all this other stuff, G-Man, no subtlety, repeatedly, with certainty, and with the endorsement of true empiricism, is 100 million% certain it was sock account.
Yes.
He said unquestioningly, fucking sock account is the one who's been doing this. Hana hacks his phone. Yeah. That's Hana that's doing it. It's whatever. Hana, are you on mobile or? Hana, I'd like to bless you here, but I don't want to do so if you're on a mobile device.
She's in Bosnia right now, so it takes a little while.
She's on a muted device.
All right, don't count it.
Yeah, no, sorry, Shani's talking about me, so I was just like, oh, I wonder what this cow's gonna do next, and then it was just like,
that's fine. Yeah, you're welcome in here. We got it without you though. Other people know who can deal with it. Let me go. I'm just gonna hang out with my kids for a little bit. Yeah, I'll be listening.
Go hang out with your kids.
Have fun,
you don't need to deal with that shit.
Go play.
So,
Real life is more important.
So, hint. I knew I was going to lose a bet The guest that I have. Yeah, the big shock. But well, no, I knew I was going to lose it because this week on Black Heathens we have Beckel's brother coming on, so I can't really talk about him.
shit.
Yeah, so I knew I was going to lose it.
okay.
So
That's
why.
not fair.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's not
Yeah.
fair, but you know.
Really quick. There was a request in the chat from Sam that somebody criticized you for losing him that $100.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
fuck
was gonna go
Drag.
with that.
Before you do that, you're supposed to tell me so that I can fucking win the $20. The fuck, man? I thought we were
Well, no,
broke.
Mrs. Drag
Yeah.
got it.
No, keep
Yeah,
it
I
in
know,
the
but
family. I get it.
Mrs. Drag doesn't need $20. I do. You're supposed to
Yes,
help a
no,
sister. What the fuck,
No,
man?
I owed her $14, so I said, well, I know I'm going to lose this bet, so
Oh, you son of a bitch!
hey, you know what? I play to win. Okay, I play to win.
So
I
I
didn't
mean,
know
technically,
about
you
the
get
bet.
$20 anyway.
Okay,
Well,
so
no,
I had the
seriously.
chance to bet that you wouldn't keep your damn mouth shut, and I didn't get a chance to put my ante in. I'm pissed.
I mean, if you want to give me the money for losing the bet, I mean, I'm not going to turn it away.
No. My bet would have been that you couldn't keep your mouth shut.
Oh, okay, well, so they'd be.
I'm gonna say
120
something
plus.
really mean though, and I just wanted to say, Drag, is Shani's tits like extended out like 6 feet in front of her? It looks like she has 2 tables supporting each tit. What the fuck?
Hannah, stop, please stop.
I copy and pasted that
If
message.
she wants to
and I
talk shit,
sent
it's
it.
fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay, most women get things like sex swings for the sake of having sex, not to suspend their tits. Just saying.
It's fucking weird. I don't know. I was tuning in during Drag's Hangout just to see what was going on because I saw she was live and we were talking about her, and she just started making weird noises. And I'm not saying they're sex noises. It's just a lot of noises and grunts, and she could be
Unknown
getting a back
origin.
massage or something. I don't know. There was just a lot of grunting, and I felt incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, I
Maybe-
mean, yeah, we know what it was.
Maybe she
I'm
was.
not
snoring.
saying what it was. I'm just saying it was a lot of weird noises.
imagine
And
it was
it
a
could also
salt
be a
and
really
fucked
low
up.
back massage.
Maybe she was snorlaxing. I mean snoring.
Snorlax.
I didn't hear a
I don't
poke
know
flute.
why did she try to pop off at the mouth these past 2 days? Like the fuck has got her
Well,
panties in a
She
twist.
wants
besides
the
weight?
attention.
It's because she escaped from her Pokeball. Just saying.
I thought Route 21 cleared up. Man, ain't that something? Only first generation Pokemon players get that joke, but okay. I needed to get to the bike path anyway, so fuck it, right?
Well, it's not like the other generation where you had to fucking either chop down Sudowoodo or catch him. So
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
really
so-
can't chop him down. You have to squirt him with a water bottle first. before
it's
you
still
can do
fucked up. He's a
anything.
rock type. That's Sudowoodo genocide right there.
It is.
Oh, there we go. Apparently, I Love Jesus is
It's another
yeah.
sock account for Chaos.
Well,
He's
Okay.
I gotta time him. Do I have to time him out again? This motherfucker, dude, you're wasting my time. Just get the fuck out of here.
Actually, well, let's be nice for a moment and address
Oh my
the question
God.
being
It's
asked.
chaos theory.
okay.
Come on.
So
and he's
shut
been
up.
accusing me of being a witch for weeks.
Shut
Okay.
Did
up.
anyone else just get the notification? Shani's live again.
Well, regardless,
What
I don't follow Shani. I
the
wouldn't
shit?
know.
What?
The videos are being
However,
recorded. It
Drag
doesn't
is
matter.
Proof that Drag is Gary is the name of the stream. Just saying.
Oh, let's do it. Is she gonna have the
Yeah.
live chat this time? I want to
Oh,
have
yeah,
a live
the,
chat. I wanna do it.
So one of the Garys, so one of her GTA videos, 2 of the Garys pop up. One of the Garys says, "Hi, G-Man thinks that I'm Drag." Another Gary pops up, says hi to the other Gary, and says, "Oh, hi, I'm Drag." Literally 2 people pretending to be the Gary Ridgway killer, who are both anonymous. One of them, for whatever reason, decides he wants to say that he's me, and then that's the evidence that she needs in order. And so she says that, well, I'm denying it now for legal reasons. And I go, well, Shani,
Well, I honestly, I think they're just getting butthurt because pretty much all of us that have any fucking integrity left are sitting there refusing to sign on to their stupid I Am Spartacus thing that they're trying to get going.
Well, yeah.
Because fuck
I was
that's
messaged
stupid.
about that, and yeah.
Here's a hole, go die in it.
well, what's weird is she thinks I'm a Gary, but then she also says that I have control over them because the first thing she said, hey, you need to call them off. Well, if I am one of them, then why would I need to call them off? You said, well,
The majority of us have told them to go fuck off anyway, but You know,
I mentioned
they agreed to fuck off. They fucked off for a week and a half. Then idiot boy decides to drop the universe.
So yeah.
Well,
The problem is they've effectively she's but now believing G-Man's bullshit that you're Gary Ridgway and you're phoning up and you're doing this and you're doing that at the same time as you're holding a hangout and one of them's in your hangout.
Well, I got skill. What can I say? Evidently, I'm a super ultra hacker who can be in 2 places at once.
I mean, like, let's be real. Every ill that's in these people's lives could be attributed to Dragnot, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, they could come out and say, "Oh, it's a guy cut me off in traffic. It must have been Dragnot," and I wouldn't be surprised.
It's because I suck up all the intellect and success in the world, and they don't have any left. So.
But this is the thing that Hogtub was talking about before. They refuse to accept personal responsibility for their faults, including G-Man's address and workplace. I posted a video with the sort of Ronnie thing where how is smarter, and of course it was just a typo. But there's no way he would have taken responsibility for a typo. He would have just changed it and then lied saying he'd said it in the first place. That's a perfect example of not taking responsibility for, just a basic thing.
No accountability whatsoever.
Yeah.
Same deal for the now infamous AT-Beak synthase thing. Like, he didn't admit to a fuck up there. He just criticized us saying, "Oh, y'all are just latching onto something ridiculous."
Well, it's the DNA
right.
degrades in water or whatever it was, He's basically made both claims and said he was all right all along.
Well, that's one of the things that ultimately, I wanted to try and I guess start as a conversation. And a part of me was hoping Hell in the Handbasket was around and some other folks where you say, look, what do we do? We get new people into the community to engage with? Do we just kind of pamper and coddle the people who are here? Like, what is the actual solution? Because, dealing with someone who's this mentally unstable and the fact that she coddles someone else who's mentally unstable is unhealthy for everybody.
That was actually one point I'd want to make. Again, I whittled a couple out just as I wanted this rant to be a little bit shorter. But one of the things I'd wanted to say of radical evangelicals, these little one-man ministries, one thing to remember, and I want to be careful not to be misinterpreted, I am not saying that they all have some mental problem, right? I'm not buying into the whole thing about, well, you have to be like delusional, or you have to have a mental illness to be Christian, or even have to have a mental illness to be radical evangelical. It's not the case. I do think that there's an attractive force there. I do think that there's something about that faith, and I could elaborate on this a little bit more because I'd be more specific about it, but that there's something about that faith that differentially attracts, that it's very appealing to people who have mental health problems. But they're attracted to a lot of, those people, you see them in a lot of different forms. But here's the thing I want to say about the evangelicals, and you need to remember this when you're dealing with them, that one of the features is if they do have a mental health problem, they will not seek help for it. It's something that's antithetical to their approach. Now, I'm sure that you could go through all the radical evangelicals that and you can find one that actually did seek help. Counseling of some form or therapy or whatever. But I'm saying, as a general rule of thumb, when you meet one and you start to detect, oh, there's something a little bit mentally off with them, it's a safe bet that it's something untreated mentally off with them. I've been a little more candid lately in saying that G-Man has FASD. A lot of people do. There's a spectrum. Some people cope well with it. Some people are much, much, much worse than G-Man. G-Man does very well by not getting into substance abuse, which a lot of people with FASD will do. A lot of respect for G-Man staying off of substances. And if he's hooked on anything, it's hooked on working out. And I think that is a great thing for G-Man. It's a very good choice in his part. That's a very strong move for him. But he doesn't actually acknowledge that he has some cognitive impairments. He's lately been coming out and saying he's actually smarter than these other people, that he knows more than these other people, right? He sort of picked up the true empiricism tale there. And then there are a lot of people who are a lot worse off than G-Man. I mean, Shani's got some problems that's well established through anyone who knows her in her real life. Her mom has been very candid lately, not so much more recently, but a lot of, she's got a couple of videos.
She's also in the chat now.
Who?
If I
Her mother?
may,
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Oh, my.
Okay. And you know, Shannon,
if I may, right quick,
hold on
I
a second.
think the problem is that to some degree, giving G-Man all the attention, and especially the new stuff with what the Garys are doing, are actually deepening any psychosis he may have.
I don't know that psychosis would be the word to attach to G-Man. I think that there's really nothing that you see in G-Man's behavior that would sort of fit the definition of psychotic. He definitely has some mood regulation problems, and he definitely has some cognitive impairments. And there are a lot of people who do. I'm not saying there's anything bad
Hang on,
about.
there's a difference between saying that somebody has some psychoses and saying they're psychotic. There's a little bit of a difference there. The psychosis that I'm referring to is his obsession pertaining to atheists and all these weird conspiracy ideologies he has pertaining to that. Not that he's specifically psychotic, but that he seems to be. There are these certain views he has that could be viewed as psychoses that seem to be being fed by that. You know, all atheists are evil and trying to kill Christians and whatnot.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, I thanks for that clarification, because I'll give you that. The whole thing about, I mean, does he actually believe that atheists? He said it so many times that, like, oh, if they changed the law and it was legal to kill Christians, you guys would be woohoo, blah blah blah, and we'd be out killing Christians. I mean, does he actually? Is it just shit he says, or does he actually believe it? That
a part of
it's
me
not
thinks,
healthy either way.
Well, here's the thing, and I say this, and I have to draw upon my experience with him in real life, and probably Hannah can echo this. I think to some degree he genuinely does believe that, because usually he did somewhat drop the facade and acknowledge the facade that he puts up when he gets online to kind of amp things up and to get people riled up. But he ended up repeating some of the more shocking claims, such as, you know, I was surprised you guys didn't try to kill me or throw me in the street. And he started describing in graphic detail how we would kill him. So that, to me, it was a bit jarring, and I think he actually does believe that.
So it's a weird, how do I put it? So he does have a genuine fear of atheists, quote unquote. He does believe, like Drag said, a lot of the stuff that he's saying, like, oh, somehow, you know, Mao was atheist, so therefore, you know, he killed a lot more people than any Christian did, and Stalin and all these people. So he actually does believe that. When it comes to, like, people
when he was
meeting
doing
him
the Dachshund
face to
hang, he
face-
spent how much time screaming murderers, talking about atheists into the mic?
Yeah,
I mean, he
murderers
does
and
believe it.
pedophiles and
Yeah, he does believe it. He's one of those, well, since they don't have any morality thing, then they don't have any problem with me calling them out for doing things they've done in history. You know, it doesn't matter he's demonstrably wrong and all that, obviously. It's just, you know, he's got this paranoia that comes out when he feels like he's been challenged, or when he feels like his trust has been violated, even slightly.
Let's talk about trust for a second here, because I do want a little bit of support group sentiment going on here. And I'm going to pick on Johanna a little bit, but because I think it's helpful. Knowing what you know now, with the benefit of hindsight, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Do you have any regrets? Let me leave it open-ended like that. Is there anything you would have done differently in your relationship with G-Man that is in every city related?
No. That's the thing. I think I do genuinely I am like that to everybody. Drag could say, you know, Nate, everybody. I'm kind to everybody I meet. And it's not just like a facade I put on. So for me, when I did meet G-Man, you know, I'm not going to say we never had fun or anything like that. We did, of course we did. I did enjoy, you know, going to movies with him and taking him places, because I didn't expect the same type of fun that, let's say, like me and Drag would have, or me and Sam, or, you know, or Sam and I, sorry, but, you know, I had a different type of expectation where, okay, you know, we don't have to talk about YouTube or all this other stuff, but we can just have a good time talking about, I don't know, childhood card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And, you know, what happened in this comic book versus, you know, the next installment and all this other stuff. So no, I think I was really respectful, and I like that.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for you, but I want to let you know I hear you so completely, because I completely agree with that. And I'll let you know that over the years, I've got this sort of following. There's one guy in particular who I'd consider a good friend, and he lives in British Columbia, and he knows who he is if he's watching, who will sort of like nanny boo boo every time something goes wrong. Like when I'm like, oh, that Arcane is a fucking jerk, he'll be like, oh, well, you know, and he'll sort of be like, oh, didn't I tell you so? I told you so. Well, yeah, I know. This has happened with Nephilim Free, with Jason Burns, with Arcane Logos, with G-Man, that I'll be nice to these guys. And I'll say, you know what, he's a good guy. Like, just everyone sees he's a good guy. He's got some crazy beliefs, but he's okay, you know. And then after a while, I'll be like, oh, what a fucking jerk. Then they'll kind of jump up and say, like, aha, I told you so. Like, there's no point in being friends with those people. And I agree with you, Hannah. And I'll tell you something, the next guy that pops up, as long as he approaches conversation in a nice way, it's an interesting. I like conversation, you know, and they're good people, and I would still be friends with the next guy. But what people need to know is that when they jump up and say, "I told you so," look, I told me so. I know that when you're friends with a Nephilim Free, that there's going to be some shit that happens someday, and they're going to be put to the test, and they'll usually fail the test. They don't always. I will say, like, I was looking at Jesus Freak 777's channel today, and it's funny. Like, he's got, like, he used to get a lot of views, and now he's got, like, he'll do some Bible Jesus-y stuff and he'll get 78 views, and then he'll show off his new handgun and he'll get 11,000 views. And, you know, then he'll make something out of, he does like little artworks and machinery and stuff out of the metal from pop cans or from beer cans.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and he'll get like 2,000 views on those. It's interesting, you know. And he's a good egg, you know. He's had his problems, but he's a good egg, and he's somebody I'd still get along with. And Gear Up, I know people went all nutty with Gear Up, but you know, these are some sensible people in their day-to-day business. They just got some wacky beliefs. So I enjoy being friends with these people, but it's got to be tentative. And yeah, people are going to sort of throw out and say, oh Hannah, you shouldn't. Blah, blah. But I do want to ask you this: in your how about giving G-Man your personal information?
Well, like, I think some personal information it would be like impossible to avoid. Like, there's no way I can coordinate meeting up with him if I don't give him my mobile number so he could tell me if he's running late or not, right? You know, obviously I'm going to meet him in person, so he's going to see my face. And, you know, the last name bit, you know, I ordered drinks and stuff like that when I was around him, and I'd obviously, you know, if we're sitting at a 2-seater table, you know, I'd hand, you know, keep my ID out ready to order, you know, a drink and something. So he easily could have seen it, and, you know, there's just like stuff like that. There's no way to get around it, and I wouldn't make an attempt to hide it from him. Like, somehow I'm ashamed, you know, of my face or something. I'm gonna put a mask on when I meet him. No, obviously not. Uh, a burner phone, I don't have one available to me. Like, I'm not cable, you know, I can't afford one of those. And so, you know, my mobile number is good enough. And, you know,
I guess the problem is that he just violated reasonable expectations.
right. I mean, it's not like he says these things like I gave him my SSN and you know, or social security number and my address, and I never did. There's no reason for me to give him those things, but
The
you know,
SSN claim was actually not about you; it was about somebody else. I just can't think of her name right now.
yeah, but, you know, that's just, you
It
know,
was Miss Star.
there's nothing. Oh, it was Miss Star. Yeah, but as far as those three things are concerned, there's nothing differently that I could have done reasonably. You know, otherwise I'd just be making the relationship between the two of us while we were hanging out just that much more hostile, right? Because, like you said, it's not as if I didn't know that this was going to happen eventually. I did. This was going to eventually come to the test, and I knew eventually he was going to listen to true empiricists and telling him I'm hacking stuff, even though he has no idea what the fuck that means.
Yeah.
But there's some things I just can't avoid. Like, he's obviously going to see my face. I obviously have to give him my mobile number, and he's eventually going to learn my last name.
Yeah.
And I'm not ashamed that he got that.
Okay, and I know Drag has something he wants to say, but let me just sort of close off this part of it by saying, well, you unmuted, so I assumed it was profound, but or at least audible. But I guess I would say, and I for one thing, it wouldn't be fair to criticize you for actions that you didn't actually do. I know G-Man says that you gave him information that you're telling us you actually hadn't given him, hadn't given to him, and I'm inclined to believe you and not him because, you know, you can't argue the actuarials on that point. I think that what I would do is sort of use your example as a bit of a cautionary tale to people. Yeah, go ahead and be friends with people. You know what? You don't have to have the same. Don't be like the, you know, the true empiricism of the world that just sit there isolated, and the only quote unquote friends he has are people. He doesn't really know these guys. He's not really friends with them. You know, don't be like that. If you're the kind of person that likes to be friends with people, then be friends with them. But as I say, you need to remember, if they've got any mental health problems, they will not be seeking treatment for it. It will be an untreated problem, and know that they're constantly suspicious and fearful and hateful. you can still have a friendship of some semblance within that context. But especially when you get somebody like G-Man who has the really poor, emotional regulation and poor impulse control, take those extra steps. You can be friends with somebody without giving them your accurate name. I think, and that's the way I've always approached it. Is as much as I've been friends with these people, I've not felt the need to share. I continue to be friends with Jason Burns. He doesn't know my name. I mean, he had my
Always
number
keep him
for
at
a
arm's
while.
length.
We had that problem. People might remember when Jason was calling me. Was like 4:00 in the morning, 4:11 a.m. He started calling me one day, and I got a little heated with him. But and then it just caused days and days worth of drama because they said, "Look, I've got to block you on Skype so me and my wife can sleep, and then I'll unblock you later in the day." And he was super upset about this, and so he'd won me because I blocked him on Skype. But it was about 4:00 in the fucking morning, like.
And you stabbed him in the back.
Yeah, but I mean, to this day, I mean, he's a good guy. I mean, Cliff at some point might want to say a little bit of an update on how Jason's doing. But it's probably been more than a year since you've seen him. But he's just doing. Crow Many Clouds says, "What arm's length? Hogtie's arm or Jason's?" Because there's some.
Hogtie's obviously. Jason's arm doesn't go anywhere.
Jason has normal sized arms. It's just his legs that are incredible.
It's his legs.
Oh wow. Okay.
He reminds me of Cotton Hill from King of the Hill. Right? He's got a normal sized torso.
Jason's doing perfectly fine now that he's not challenging atheists. He's now confronting Muslims in London's Speaker's Corner.
So his life is in danger.
Yeah. Well, no, and we don't. You know what? I mean, we don't hang out a lot. He's not like we don't share common interests. But I like Jason. I wish him well. He's a good guy, and I know anytime I can call him up on Skype, he can call me up on Skype. We get along great. Now that we're not arguing on the internet. But you know what? The guy still doesn't know my real name.
That's a friendship based on a foundation of lies.
A foundation of lies. I trust him. Well, I've also been honest about the reason. I mean, there are people. I mean, Dragnut, you don't know my real name. Cliff Jumper, I know your real name, right? But you don't know mine, right? And
enjoying how many people recently decided that they know mine. There's this thing called a pen name.
There's nothing dishonest about it. And here's the thing. I mean, you look at some of the people, and there are people on here who will actually share, like contact me through their personal email accounts, and I know their first and last name through email, and then they'll send me like copies of things from their freaking medical records, and then so I know shit about them. But then I just say, look, I don't give you that back. I'm sorry, and it's just because I need to
protect yourself.
Yeah, it's totally for protection, and there's nothing dishonest about it. It's not like me saying, "Oh, well, I don't trust you" or whatever. It's just, why do you need that to be friends with me? And anyway, just so you don't need, even for people that quote unquote on our side,
never trust anyone completely.
Yeah, the thing is,
I think it's a little different, right? Because meeting them in person, it's like when we go out places, like to a billiards or something. They do card you at the door, so it's not like I can give them a
fake. Is a different level of trust.
Well,
yeah, it's not like I can give a fake ID or something. I'm gonna have my real ID with me to get into places that we want to go.
So I do have a quick question about the example you gave at the beginning, Hogtie, with the person named Dennis and their penchant for children. Is that a particular running joke that you have about a mutual contact of ours?
It is definitely not. It is definitely not.
Okay.
It was,
okay.
When I first told that story, it was André, and then the second time it was Denis, and then this time I just went with Dennis because the name Dennis is a lot more familiar because I'm telling the story to mostly Americans. So when I talk about, André Gauthier, you don't know who that is, So
fair enough.
If I say Dennis, people know what Dennis is. So.
Well, and that's why I picked up on it, and I was like, is he talking to? No.
I don't know, man. I just heard Andre the Goat.
I
got just a question, and it's something I sent to you privately, Hogtie, is something to think about in your just before you went live or anything. And it's like, what do we do with this? It's like dealing with evangelicals is the title of this video. What do we do with this? What do we do with this information? I mean, when it comes to the G-Man stuff, my suggestion, and again, as you stated earlier on, I'm not going to tell people what to do. I'm just give people what I want, what I think, and leave people to make their own decisions. But my suggestion, just to cast G-Man out into the toxic wilderness where he belongs, This is a place that's populated by Brett Keane and Richard Raspberry and the Doxers and the people who just shouldn't. People have shown that they can't be trusted and should be avoided.
Doxing,
other
turning on
lols.
cameras without permission, and scamming. I mean, he's hit the Brett Keane trifecta to the point that there are several of us that are jokingly calling him a Keenanite.
Yeah. Now, but hang on, let me just finish.
Sorry.
Are the lols worth having this guy in the community? Is that since the CCP have shown that they will bury their morality heads in the sand when it comes to perpetuating fellowship with G-Man?
That's the weirdest thing, because I thought, I said this before, I thought if there was even a sliver of hope of them being able to, at least in public, rebuke G-Man's behavior, I thought it would be when G-Man doxed everything he had on me, he doxed Fiona's middle name, made threats towards Drag's wife and kid, just doxing, even Kyle from Nunsec for some fucking reason, right? Like, you'd think that such a blanket shitty thing to do would be pretty much as much of a catalyst as you would need to want to say to him, hey, you kind of fucked up.
You were surprised?
Here.
I was not surprised.
No, I'm not surprised. There's a difference. It was a hope that I had that they would take that opportunity to say, hey, that's you can't be doing that. But they didn't take me up on my hope.
I am surprised, but not in terms of like Ronnie. But Veckel, honestly, I thought he had more integrity than that.
Yeah, I thought the same of Veckel. Sorry, I do want to get back to Cliff Jumper's question. It's a good one, but yeah, let's exhaust this for.
Can I just finish off the end of it though?
That
is, if they're going to do that, I think we should make it clear that they don't deserve to be in this community, a part of this community either. After all, what do they offer? How many conversations are they actually involved with? How often will they come out from under their bed and condescend to coming into another room where they don't have access to the boot and mute buttons? If they don't want to be part of it, then they should be cast out as well.
Okay, well let's do that first, and we'll go back to the point about the do they ever scold each other? They claim that they're just so vigorous at keeping each other honest, and it's just such bullshit. But yeah, let's get to that. So my quick answer to the thing about what to do with them, and should we cast G-Man out? I don't care, because what's to cast out? This was 2 or 3 fireside rants ago. I said something along the lines of the whole pick up, like when Antonio was like, we pick up my ball and go home, and I said, like, look at your hands, like you don't have the ball. You for 2 years you've been sitting on your grandmother's, on Mima's plastic wrapped couch. Like, you're not in the game with the rest of us. There's no need to cast these guys out because they ejected themselves from the conversation a long time ago. So my honest answer to that question is you take it on a case by case basis. This warning good people. He's been showing up a little bit more. I had a conversation with him the other day, and I'm going to say it was a great conversation, because at one point it went poorly. And we both de-escalated, because we're human fucking beings who know, look, we're having a conversation. Like, let's be sensible about it, and treat each other like humans, accept each other's human foibles, right? So, if he wants to come into a hangout, he's welcome to come into a hangout. When I said today, I don't want G-Man in my hangout because I have no choice now. He's banned because he's a doc dropper. He hasn't apologized for it. He'll claim that he has apologized for it. He hasn't, and it doesn't matter because he's a doc dropper. So he's gone. I banned doc droppers from my hangouts. Out he goes. But there's nothing to ban because I wasn't letting him in my hangouts anyway, because all he does, he comes in, he overtalks people. What I used to do is I'd let him come in and I'd tell him, hey, G-Man, you're welcome to talk. You get your turn. Everybody else gets their turn. You're following the same rules as everybody else. I'd mute him once and then I'd kick him out. He's never been in a hangout of mine for probably 3 years now for more than 5 minutes, because he cannot talk like a normal person for 5 minutes. And I can't tolerate it. My hangout style is very, very different. Drag was doing a bit of a different thing with him a while ago, but for me, there's nothing to throw out, because those guys cannot join my conversations anyway, because they can't handle it.
I think you're misunderstanding what I mean by cast out or throw out. I mean, cast out of our interest, out of our let's watch what the goofy idiot says today. It's like, okay, why would we even bother looking at them anymore?
And that's the issue that I have here, because now when I made my video and I said, well, I have to take responsibility for my role in this. A part of the reason why people watch my channel is solely to see me shit on G-Man. That is a large portion of why a good portion of our audience here even wants to hear us. Like there's not people here who want to hear from science heads or philosophy heads. They want to see people being shit on, the Jerry Springer aspect of it. So we can't tell those people that, well, you just have to change your interest. You're going to find something else, because they're going to go elsewhere and find it.
Oh, we have plenty of lols cows.
Yeah, and there's also plenty of people who have crazy beliefs who are also capable of sensible conversation. We don't need them and their particular crazy beliefs to come in and shit on our conversations and make them crappy. And I've had that opinion for a couple of years. That's why those guys don't come into my hangouts. I have no interest in having them around. Now, actually, we're sort of doing two things at once here, but we'll make that work in our advantage. One of the things, like Drag, you were saying you had done a video, and I would guide people to watch that one. Why don't you give us the title of it when you have a moment? Because I think that was good when you said, I'm going to sit down and think about my role in this, because I go through this every year or so. I sit down and go, what are we doing? Like, we don't have to have a really profound purpose, but we shouldn't be here to hurt people. If we can do some good as a side effect of our fun, that's great. But a lot of times we like hanging out with each other. It's like people, that and we all watch. I used this example before, but it's like, what do people talk about when you're friends? Sometimes you end up having these water cooler conversations about, oh, we're Ross and Rachel going to get back together. I know it's a bit of a dated example. Work with me. I haven't watched TV for more than 10 years. But it's that sort of thing. So what do we talk about? Like Fiona and I, imagine how many common interests Fiona and I have. All the crazy things that Fiona and I talk about when we do an off-air conversation, or the email that we exchange. Can you imagine the range of stuff that we talk about? Just wacky, all over the map stuff, plus some really personal stuff. When we have a problem, one of us will write to the other and say, well, this shit's going on, So we have really good conversations about that stuff. But you know what? A lot of that time is peppered with, hey, did you see what Ronnie did this week? Because it's something to talk about, But I want to say a thing about the accountability. I want to sort of combine it with your point about accountability. You've done it, I've done it, where you sit down and say, I just want to think about, like, are we doing the right thing? Maybe I'm going to put my opinion out there that we should stop this. Oh, the video title is Unsubbed and Moving On, where you mention, and I've gone through this too, I've said, well, maybe I've kind of pushed his buttons. When it comes to the accountability side of it, if True Empiricism or Veckel would have said the following, I would have went, yep, I agree with you. If they would have said, look, it was 100% completely wrong for G-Man to lose his shit the other day and start screaming like that and waving a hammer around and then reading numbers off his phone, that is unacceptable. But when is this community going to learn that when you ride a guy every day and you push his button every day, the way Dragnut does and the way he has been doing for some time, when are we going to stand up and say, is that what we want to be doing? When is Dragnut going to stand up and say, if they would have said that, and I'm not saying I 100% agree with that sentiment, but if they would have said that, I would have went, you know what, that's a good point. Why do people ride G-Man so hard? Why do we push his button so much? This is something Dragnut needs to think about. This is something, go to your mom for advice, Dragnut, right? This is what I would have said. But the thing is, Dragnut did that independently. He said, I'm going to sit and I'm going to think about, well, is this what I want to be doing? Maybe this isn't what I want to be doing. But here's the thing. That is not what those guys said about it. They said, oh, well, maybe G-Man shouldn't have whatever he did, But those guys, what do you expect from them? Because they have no morals, no moral compass. They have no moral foundation. And they went and they just shit on all atheists, myself included, when I had nothing to do with it. And it was just them. They used that as another chance to pat G-Man on the back and tell him he did nothing wrong, to endorse all the crazy shit that he does, and to turn their hatred on a group of people that they deeply, deeply hate. And that's why they get no traction with their whatever it was, bullshit. You know what I mean?
Apology turning into a non-apology?
Exactly, yeah.
Well,
But you
that's
know what I'm
the
saying?
saddest thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
so
how many... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I'm just going to, because I jumped in a couple of points there. So I just want to reiterate what the main point was that if they would have just said, yes, that was wrong of G-Man to do that, but those guys need to think about how they push his buttons and they do it on purpose. I would have said, you know what, you got to point Veckel. You know what, you got to point True Empiricism. But that's not what they said. They said, G-Man, maybe you shouldn't have whatever, but he's fine. G-Man's a victim in all this stuff, right? And then they'll sit there and they'll let G-Man lie right to their faces, and they'll go, yeah, good point, G-Man, good point, G-Man. They just use it as a platform for their hatred. I'm sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
No, I was going to reiterate that myself. Just it's the fact that, he still can do no wrong. And I wonder, is it partly in fear that maybe, they've shared intimate secrets with him, so maybe they think, oh, well, they've done it to, this person, that person, another, maybe they're going to do it to me too. I don't know. But there's something in there that it's partly because they're each other's type of Christian, right? So they're the Christians that they really take seriously, like totally my brother in Christ, and not like the Fiona Holy Spackle type Christians, which aren't really Christians. But it's this strange tribalistic mentality that even when it's detrimental to the tribe in and of itself, it's something that could definitely implode later on should G-Man decide to pull the trigger on Vekel or TE or whatever. They're still willing to walk straight into that furnace and just say, yeah, sure, why not? G-Man, you did great. No, you're fine, dude. And I wonder, is there anything that can happen? Not just to me or Fiona or Drag or anybody, on quote unquote atheist side of the community. I wonder in general, is there anything that can happen that really gets them to go, fuck, I better walk away from this as hard and as fast of a walk as I can?
Nicola has rejoined us. Nicola is here.
How can I rejoin you if I didn't join previously?
Oh, I thought you were here and you left.
No.
Quel temps fait-il aujourd'hui? It's hot in Saskatchewan.
Very. Plus 33 with the humidex.
It's flat. There's no trees. There's no shade.
Bugger. That's cruel.
It's not that bad considering what we had a couple of weeks ago, where it was plus 41 with the humidex. A bunch of old people died as a result of that, though.
That's just silly. That only happens in ovens. That's not real temperatures. Don't be silly.
Oh, yeah, let me throw this up in catch us up, La Belle Province, what we call La Belle Province, Saskatchewan. Actually, I believe that's another province they call that. Population.
That's a contradiction in terms.
What's the current population there?
I think we dipped below 1 million. So I think
we're below 1 million.
Yeah, I think we're sitting at 997,000.
Oh wow!
Is that only counting the living or also counting the dead?
The dead, yeah. It's a lot of cemeteries in that place. No, I'd mentioned to either directly or indirectly to Hannah and MP about the MP was saying something about talking about traffic and the noise and stuff. He goes, "Well, that's what it's like when you live in a city of 9 million people." And I remember thinking, like, where I live, it's 3 million people, but that's not the city. That's like the province. It's the size of Texas. Saskatchewan's bigger than Texas, right?
Yeah, and we're about 2.5 times bigger than Texas, but less than 1 million people. And half of the population is consisted in 3 cities.
3 cities, yeah.
And the rest is sporadically spread out throughout the province in communities of less than 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Funny enough, despite our densely populated, relatively small geographical location, I have yet to have gunshots ring in the back of any hangout I've been in, unlike TE, which makes me wonder, like, which one of us really does live in a shitty situation? Me with the sirens occasionally, or him with the gunshots occasionally?
I actually had that a few weeks ago, too. I think I was in a room with Cliff Jumper, and somebody got shot in the face about 2 blocks away from me.
Well, the local militia group goes out into the woods with their AR-15s periodically, so...
Yeah.
That
Gunshots in the
happens.
background are not always criminal. Sometimes
True.
It's just your neighbor shooting beer cans.
True. Or possums. That's more common.
But Hogtie, you were asking like why these guys sometimes don't throw themselves out of their own group for bad behavior. They're all joiners.
Well, even
let me
even just tell somebody. Yeah, even just tell somebody that.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay,
they're joiners. Without the group, they have nothing. So they're not going to risk being thrown out of the group for chastising someone, even in a minor infraction.
And we have a perfect example of this, which is Shani. Shani does kind of stick to her faith position.
There's a better example, Cliff.
Well, let me just finish.
Okay. All right.
So what happens is, Shani will say, "Oh shit, you can't do that kind of thing. That's not the Christian way," and she'll be pushed out. She'll be pushed out, and then she'll end up like, "Well, where am I going to go now?" Exactly like you were saying a moment ago. Where am I going to go now? She hangs around with the atheists, being friendly with them for a while because they don't trust her because she's got a reputation of being two-faced. And then what will happen is she'll get a kick in the backside to remind herself, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be a Christian, but I align with their theology more than other people like Fiona or Spackle or whatever." So she'll go back to them with her tails between her legs, So with her tail between her legs, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for criticizing you," and now she's back on the team.
Yeah, and you know what? Sorry,
until she goes back on that.
Yeah, sorry, this is off topic, but I'm you know, we're the non-believers tend to be fetishistically attached to truth and to facts, and now I feel awful. I just realized while Alberta has that chunk missing that's assigned to BC because of the Rocky Mountains, people think Saskatchewan's bigger. Saskatchewan's much narrower. Alberta is slightly bigger than Saskatchewan. And I think we're victims of the Mercator projection here, because if you look at ground area, and I'll do it in square miles just because I'm generous to our neighbors to the south. Alberta, 500. So 255,000 square miles. Saskatchewan, merely 251,000 square miles, while Texas clocks in at 268,000 square miles. So Texas is actually slightly bigger than Alberta, which in turn is slightly bigger than Saskatchewan. Color me surprised. That's ground area, right? So
Yeah.
You should just do a hangout.
Well, to be fair, when you're flat, that's all you really have.
The prairies. Hashtag Canada facts.
Yeah.
But anyways,
just do a hangout called Canada stuff.
Anyways, back to what we were talking about. Hawktie, remember what happened to Hilarious Zulu?
Hilarious, yeah. No, I don't. Yeah. Why?
Oh, he got outcast.
He tried getting into that group of guys over there, and eventually they threw him out, and they threw him out hard.
But that was after. Excuse me. That was after he painstakingly avoided ever criticizing G-Man in public. And there was one particular hangout that I want to say part of it happened on my hangout, and then G-Man had heard about it. Then he went on G-Man's channel, and I mean apologized profusely.
But that's what I'm saying about their joiners. You don't do anything to criticize the group, or the group removes you. He criticized something, even minorly, and was thrown out.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the fact that he was a Seventh-day Adventist that, like, threw him out.
Yeah.
They were willing to overlook that.
Yeah, it's wire hangers in the closet.
Well, to be fair, this isn't anything exclusive to the CCP. It's like, it's with any group, this sort of dynamic where you criticize top brass on anything. You're going
No, Chris. It's the size of the infraction.
Yeah.
Yes. You can be disqualified from becoming a dragoon if you don't offer your regular donations and praise me profusely.
Oh shit! I guess I'm about to be outcast.
Yeah.
Okay, Drag. I sent you a liter of maple syrup that you've been for 10 years.
Ooh.
And I'm still working out how to
drank it all.
Bars. So.
Well, I'm not going to make any promises concerning me and the bottle of maple syrup and diabetes, but I will accept all pledges and donations graciously. And
see, Nicola, our plan worked.
Yes.
No, but I think there is a bit of tribalism on any front, in any group. And I jokingly refer to dragoons and me as a cult, and I refer to myself as a dragon lord or a king, depending on how I'm feeling. Jokingly, because there is a group dynamic there. There is a bit of, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like when I say things, there are a lot of people who do take it as gospel, and I would ask people to not do that, because a perfect example the other day was when I had the hangout about G-Man and supposedly, not being actually fired. I was a little loose with my language, and I should have carefully preface several statements. And so Rational Mind was in the chat and reminded me that, there's a fine line between me saying that I have evidence that he never got fired, and what's dubious about the scenario here that we're presenting would lead me and others to believe that he had never been fired. So I am very fortunate to have people like that, and I would encourage other people to express certain sentiments openly and without reservation, because that is the difference. That is one of the dividing lines between us and them. If we're actually going to play, this us versus them dynamic.
And not only that, Elcor, the fact that you're saying yes, sometimes I misspeak, and you take responsibility for that, which is something they are absolutely unable to do.
Yeah, I would like to think that, but I'll never want to, kind of, I guess, rest on my laurels. I think that's the phrase. because there's always something that you could have more accurate. There's always something that you could have, you could know a bit better and to have a better knowledge on. And I think that because we don't share similar goals, maybe that might be one of the dividing lines, in that many of them here claim that they're here to have conversation and to get converts and win people over for Jesus. Yet, when we actually share, those of us who disbelieve, share the stories of us conversing with believers that have had some type of impact on our lives, they're not even remotely interested in hearing it, which is interesting to me, because if your goal, if one of them at least, is to gain converts, then having a toolbox with a myriad of tools to use for that effort would seem the most, I guess, efficacious way to go about it. And they seem less than interested in doing that. So it makes me question what their real goals are.
Yeah.
This is when Hawkeye tunes in with something profound.
I'm trying to hold back. I don't want to go over.
I mean, when it came to the G-Man lost his job thing, my position was, we don't know the actual facts. You know, we don't know whether he always had a job and he was just lying about it, or that, you know, he basically gone back and his boss said, okay, yeah, you can have your job back, but no hangouts during office hours. Stop doing, don't do it, or that's it. You know, that could have been a part of the, you know, a part of the deal. And, you know, fair enough. But what we can say is that G-Man, as far as I'm aware, still has that video saying I was fired from my job and, you know, I need help with his PayPal address. And Ronnie, for at least a couple of days after G-Man, you know, had told him that he had his job back, had a video up there saying, please help with his PayPal thing. Now that's now gone. But I made a video a couple of days ago illustrating that as of that moment when I made it, he was perpetuating a fraud.
Yeah, well, that's a situation. I mean, I do think people really jumped the gun there. I said this even on the day it was happening, that just, let it be. He's got a job. He doesn't have a job, whatever. I mean, I did have that chuckle when I was like, oh, so he was at work. Well, what the heck, you know? But it's one of those things. I thought, if you wait, the thing is, when somebody's pulling a scam, when somebody's pulling some shit, when you wait a little bit, they always give you a little bit more. Take a look at, I'm going to go with a classic example here. My countryman, the Straight Dope, who made an expose video on Brett Keane. And he sat on it, and he just sat on it, and he built up, and Brett Keane kept handing him more and more information. If you watch that video on the Straight Dope about the expose on Brett Keane, you see what a truly disgusting, dishonest person Brett Keane is. Doc Dropper and so much stuff. It's a really well done. And I think, you know, we do ourselves well. Sometimes if you're not sure, sit back, because that guy that's pulling something really bad will do some shit. The other thing is, if you sit back, it gives you a chance to get a hold of yourself a little bit, right? And to say, well, wait a second, because here's the thing. This is a point that I'm kind of waiting for those guys to make. I mean, it seems obvious to me, although I think Ronnie made it in a video he did this morning. I'm not sure. I only listened to about 10 minutes of it, and he's whatever. But this is a good point. And if Ronnie made it, I want to give him credit for it. If not, I thought of this myself. What was G-Man to do? Because when people know he works at that job, it puts him in a position, and that's his fault that people know about that. But then, okay, so his boss chases him out the door. They patch things up, and he says, okay, you can come back and try a couple of days. But if we start getting phone calls, you know, then blah, right? Was G-Man then supposed to go on camera and say, wait, I have to make a correction right now so nobody's under a misunderstanding. I need to let you know that I work at blah and blah appliance, blah, 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 right? And he has, what does he do? Announce, like, not even that. Even if he would have just said, I have a job at the same place I had been working at before Dragnet got me fired. Even if he'd have said that, that ran the risk of there being more calls coming. Had he come out and, this is the thing, had G-Man come out right away and said, yeah, the guys hired me back, and I'm going to be working there on Thursday, and I'm going to be working there on Saturday, and then I'll be working there again on Tuesday, I would have smacked myself in the forehead and went, G-Man, you fucking moron, right? I would have thought, even G-Man's not that stupid. You know what? G-Man did something smart this time. When he got an hour's at work, and then he got a day's work on Saturday, he buttoned his lip, and he didn't tell the whole internet about it. Smart move, G-Man.
And generally speaking, I agree with you. But the problem is, once Ronnie tried starting to do fundraisers, I'm assuming he didn't do that without talking to GTARD first.
Well, the fundraisers throws a real wrinkle in. Sorry, Jack, you certainly next, but the fundraiser throws a real wrinkle into this because they've been out there. They, not just G-Man, but they have been out there making these false accusations of other people committing fundraiser frauds, and that really puts a spotlight on their fundraiser conduct. And I want to say again, what's really frustrating about this is that you've even got Antonio saying things like, "Oh yeah, well G-Man started, G-Man organized these fundraisers for Gus Belanger." Just a couple days ago, True Empiricism repeated this story too, that G-Man organized the fundraisers. G-Man's running around setting up fundraisers.
Actually, it goes a little deeper than that because he claims that G-Man's been involved in all these fundraisers.
All these
helped
people.
out everyone. And I'm like, no, he really hasn't. What he's done is when there's a fundraiser going, he'll go to somebody else's channel to participate in debate, somebody else's channel that might have anywhere from 300 to 1,000 subs, and won't even promote it on his main channel with his 10,000 subs.
Right. So let's be clear about this. G-Man has done jack fucking squat to help out in any fundraiser except for the fundraiser for G-Man. A couple of times he's mentioned on his channel, he's mentioned there's a fundraiser, and yeah, one fundraiser for Gus. He joined in a as I've described it, it's like Hannah came to him and said, Hannah came to him and said, "Oh, Annabelle set up this fundraiser. There's a debate thing that you can talk to Dragnut, and it's going to be a fundraiser for." Yes, I'll do it. Right? He didn't care if Gus was in the hospital or not. He didn't care what Gus was going to use the money. He didn't know who Gus was. He didn't give a shit about that stuff. G-Man had a chance to put a camera in front of his face and get into a debate with somebody, and that's why he did it. But did he take a penny out of his pocket? No. Did he do anything? Has he ever done anything helpful in these fundraisers? Yeah, he'll announce it on his channel. Yeah, he'll do these little things, which is fine. I shouldn't even diss that. That's great that he does that. But he presents it now, and True Empiricism and Antonio Fletcher all present it as G-Man is running around, sweating his bag off, doing all these things to motivate people, and he is setting up the fundraisers and organizing these fundraisers. And that is absolutely simply not true. When they do stuff like that, and at the same time accuse Hannah of committing fraud, when Hannah's the one who runs around and does this work without discussing her circumstances, let's put a pin in that, but that brings attention onto them, and that is what brings up the vigor for people to go, G-Man was engaged in a fraud. Again, I want to be clear. I totally understand why G-Man didn't tell people immediately when he got this job back. I think we would have criticized him had he come out and told us that he got this job. We should have just let the thing sit. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I said this.
I agree.
I said this on Saturday. I said this yesterday, and I'm saying it here. It's like 3 times in this hangout. Do you think Ronnie said, when he looked at those hangouts, do you think he said, yeah, you people really screwed up. You really shouldn't have done this. Do you notice that Hogtie went in and like Hogtie was trying to talk some sense into you guys? He was right. For once, I have some respect for Hogtie. No. What does he say about my role in this? He says that I'm right in there, that hell, for all I know, he could probably think I'm one of the Garys. Fuck those guys. Anyway,
so specifically, Hogtie Warning is asking what your definition of evangelism is, because he's has questions about that. But I did forget what I was going to say.
We're not talking about evangelism, but we're talking about evangelics and the evangelic mindset, I believe.
Yeah, I think he needs a definition of that. But I could have sworn you gave that earlier.
Okay, I love people's reaction to that when I said the thing about how G-Man's organizing this stuff. So I got some energy up in the room here. Let me shoot this bird in flight. My battery's dying here. I want to keep this to 2 hours. Please, somebody get motivated. Set up a hangout. Bring people in. They want to talk about this stuff. Get another hangout going. Let us know here so that we can broadcast your thing on there. Let's talk. So the whole time I've been using the term evangelicals. I've been using the term radical evangelicals, radical evangelical apologists, radical evangelical apologist one-man ministries. What you might want to hear in your head when I say that is the term. I'm sorry. Now I see up there, warning good people. Hogtie doesn't read chat, does he? I know. I'm doing 3 different things, and I know I I say this every hangout. I apologize. I like what's in the chat, and it doesn't catch my attention enough. I should be reading it more.
You should never become a doctor.
I know. What you want to hear in your head when I say that is the term fundamentalist or fundamentalist Christian. The reason I don't say fundamentalist is because the term fundamentalist is misused. People think that the term fundamentalist means that you're dedicated to the fundamentals of Christianity, and that is not the case. The people I'm talking about here, the evangelicals, the radical evangelicals, they are not, they will call themselves fundamentalists, but they are not dedicated to the fundamentals of Christianity. They are dedicated to the fundamentals of fundamentalism. So this refers to an early 20th century book, and to some of the, even earlier than that, the writings of Ellen G. White. Yeah. And they deny this, though. The modern evangelicals now will claim they have nothing to do with Ellen G. White. They adopt about 90%. They leave off the last 10%. Super crazy shit, because that woman was absolutely loony. But that's the original roots of the so-called fundamentalism. But do not confuse yourself. Warning: do not confuse yourself. Anybody who calls themselves a fundamentalist, they are not dedicated to the fundamentals of Christianity. They are not dedicated to the fundamental biblical principles or the fundamentals of Christ's teachings. They're dedicated to the fundamentals of the offshoot called fundamentalism. Does that help? Probably not. He disagrees with me.
Basically take your Bible, add Left Behind as if it's part of the Bible, crush them together, and then declare that you're one of the ones saved. And that's kind of what you end up with, is the kind of movement we're talking about.
Left Behind.
It's based more on fan fiction than it is on the actual Bible.
Real quick, Pew Review says he's going to set up the next hangout.
Well, I can.
He said he will. I need BK. I'm actually I'm waiting on Mrs. Drag. We're about to head out in a few minutes and go eat dinner actually with another YouTuber from our community, BKV, and Xavier. So we're gonna. Yeah, so that's happening. So screw you guys. But no, anyway, like I think that one of the reasons for my vigor was just I absolutely hate dishonesty. Like just not, and I'm not. Let me draw a distinction. Not people being mistaken, right? People are. We also, unintentionally make strawman arguments. We, mishear something. Just abject, fucking, just dishonesty. It really does bother me. And so to have someone accuse other people of dishonesty when they, in their best right mind, of trying to, hold as much integrity as they can, irks me. So I did not expect G-Man to come right out. Well, let me say, a part of me did, because he's an idiot. But I did expect at least some on the part of the people who took it upon themselves to make a fundraiser. I believe it's incumbent upon them to say, you know what, if I am doing this for this goal, I need to make sure that it's still in line with that goal. If this guy is still unemployed, then he still needs funds. If he is employed, then he doesn't. And it's up to me to make sure that people are not necessarily cognizant of everything that's going on, but to say, you know what, let me go ahead and remove these links. If people ask me and say, you know what, I'm ending it, and you don't have to say why. Right? It's not, everyone doesn't have to be privy to that, but you can take away all the avenues so that it doesn't give people the impression that that there's still a need for it. But I don't think that Ronnie's that thorough. I don't think that he's that honest, and I'm not going to, I'm going to give him as much charity as he gives me and anyone else in that aspect. But no, I did not believe that, Ronnie or anyone else really truly knew what was going on. But I do, and I still believe that G-Man is a dishonest fucking prick, and that he will try and recoup any losses that he believes in his head that he has taken, all the while, pretending that he is the most moral agent on this platform. But we should have probably waited. I will agree to that.
I don't even know if it matters whether or not they were, if they fully understood or were aware that that was G-Man lying, because they're still guilty by association of it.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
how would they not though? Like, when has G-Man ever taken the reins on any fundraiser? Like, to be honest, how did they not? TE's been Vekel, TE, Spoken. They've all been in my live chat when I've had fundraiser debates, and they know damn well that I'm the one that's putting the link out there. I'm making the debates at least happen as far as getting like participants and organizing it and shit. So they're well aware. They've been participants themselves as far as the live chat goes. So they just don't give a shit.
No, I mean, they're here to support G-Man. Like, they're not here to actually preach the gospel. They're not here to have conversation. They're here to be on their knees in front of G-Man and be the good little dogs that they've been being. I mean, and Shanny's now adding to the ranks of that as the Malamute, you know. But so, I mean, it's that's the way that they present themselves. And so I don't think that, you know, we do necessarily need them in any capacity other than to point and laugh, you know.
AKA, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walked away from the computer, so sorry. Jill trying to contact Xavier, and yeah, reading text messages in the live chat. Okay, so has Pew started his call or
No.
no? Okay.
Or
Okay.
Working on it.
You working on it? Okay, good.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have started while this one was still going on, right?
You're supposed to.
You're
Oh,
supposed to, because we all move over there and end this one.
Fair enough. All right.
Otherwise, this never ends.
By the way, for those people who make live hangouts, stop saying I'm going to end it. Just say I'm going to end this hangout or something, because it sounds like you're going to about to run in traffic.
Speaking of running into traffic, we all know someone who runs into traffic. Right, Drag?
Yes, we do.
Who is that, Drag?
I can't say where I lose the $100 that I already lost.
Is it the same person who brags about being able to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time?
To walk better than me.
That's pretty skilled.
Well, walk better than me, do chemistry better than me, do biology better than me, talk better than me. I
hear you wax as an ass pretty much.
Hang on.
Hear you wax as an ass pretty much.
Since the bet is over now, are you still limited to it?
No.
Okay, well there you go. You can say.
Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah.
So where's that goddamn hangout link, or do I have to fucking do it myself?
Yeah. Well, we're joined. Oh, what happened there? Okay, we're joined by Sam. I do want to make this absolutely the last segment, so get that link in here for the next hangout. I see Pew Review has sent the join link. Let's try to get the watch link out in the live chat so people know where to go to watch. Okay. There's one other attribute, and this is not something unique. I didn't include my major list because it's not unique to the radical evangelicals, but just true of all nutters on the internet, is the fantasy that there's going to be a judge. Oh, the police are going to get involved in this judge. We put you in front of a judge, and oh my goodness, oh, you're going to owe me $10 million. Now, this isn't just the radical evangelicals. This is Von Helton. This is Gary in Mendham, who was, and actually he's the exception because he actually did something. That guy actually put papers in front of a federal court and argued his case. He was claiming that people were violating his copyright, and he was saying, well, people were saying fair use, but what they were, in his view, fair use is you put up the entire video and let people decide for themselves. You don't take out excerpts. You have to use you have to put up the entire video, because he says the fact that they took clips out of my thing and put commentary to it was unfair to me, so that's not fair use. He literally had the definition of fair use exactly backwards.
Yeah,
but
his
he's
understanding of fair use was a clear violation of copyright.
The comical part
exactly backwards
of the thing when it comes to G-Man, though, is that he's basically daring people to take him to court so he doesn't have to pay to start the proceedings.
Well, he says he called the cops, and then all the cops are going to be involved, and then he says he didn't call the cops now, and it wasn't, but he called different cops. It wasn't Irvington, it wasn't Jersey City, so it was the FBI or MI6. It was 911. So he made that call. He was totally, and then they put, did the correct thing. They said it's not an emergency. He was honest. He said it's not an emergency. Great. But then he was supposed to go do a report. Maybe he did. He didn't. We have no idea. But yeah, now he wants people to sue him so that he can go to a judge. And when G-Man's the defendant in this lawsuit, the judge is going to listen to his side of the story and go, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, give him $10 million, Alfred. Yeah. Like that's what he thinks the judge is going to say. Yeah. And you know what? If G-Man has any actual friends, and I include amongst G-Man's actual friends, like people who do right by G-Man, I include myself, I include Fiona, I include Dragnet, to a large extent, Cliff Jumper to a large extent. Lots of these people who have over the years have tried to tell G-Man, look, you got to recognize the truth on this. You don't like what Dragnet did, go out there and say you don't like what he did, ignore the guy, block him, do whatever you can do to deal with Dragnet. But this fantasy that or you can go to, you can go to Dragnet and say, come on, Drag, like we were getting along well. One thing, I'm going to derail myself for a second here. One thing that just continues to bother me, that people went to that meetup in New York City and people were honest. They were good human beings. G-Man was friendly. Everybody else was friendly. It was a good chance for people to say, hey, we're all human beings. Yeah, we clash on the internet, but it's for fun. And you know what? When it comes down to it, we're human beings. And G-Man takes that whole thing and he spits in their face. He says, everybody else is a liar. G-Man could take that and say, look, come on, Drag. Like, I know you're having fun in your channel, but can we dial it down? Like, G-Man could call up Drag privately and say, look, you're being a dick. You're costing me sleep. This is not cool. Can we have a way that we can have our banter on the internet that isn't you being a dick to me? I bet Drag would respond well to that. Maybe you want to answer that question, Drag, or maybe you want to fill us in. Okay, or well, you'll give us a summary here if you want. And if you want, you can hold on or give us a summary. Fill us in on how the lull suit is going, and then that'll be our last segment. Unless Sam wants to say something, because I like when Sam's here, but he's too late. Go ahead, Drake.
So in the side chat, I have something
Fuck
funny.
both of you, especially Dragnod. God damn it, you owe me more than $100 still, and you can't keep this tard's name out of your mouth. God damn it. When I opened up this Jew travel service, when I opened it up to you and then closed it down for really everyone else, when I did that, it was under the understanding. Sorry.
That's a running joke Sam and I have about the Jewish travel agency.
That guy went nuts. What is going on here, Drake? Please
clientele of one.
Bring some sense to this. What happened?
So okay, yeah. So well, no, Sam bought my plane tickets, and so the idea was that I'm supposed to hold on to this bet so that I can pay him back sooner. That's part of the joke. So there is something in the side chat. If you're not on mobile, that I'm going to reference and not say anything about, but do not repeat that for obvious reasons once you read it. So on that, G-Man has privately contacted me in the past several times on, hey, you know what, things are getting kind of rowdy. You know, hey, I really don't like that. Can you, not do that? Specifically concerning his music, because I was live one day reviewing songs on his page. He claimed to have some type of copyright associated with the songs, and I explained to him that I don't think that he's read any of the copyright, anything concerning anything remotely related to the topic, and he can go eat a dick. And so he then tried to, well, of course, he came at me as he normally did, and then he tried a different approach and said, look, that's not technically my stuff, it's someone else's, and it's their copyright, and I'm just saying that, I got permission and you didn't. I said, okay, fine. I talked about the wife, and I just took everything down, and then we squashed it, and it was predicated upon him calming the fuck down and requesting it. And this has happened before too, privately. There have been other videos that I have taken down, specifically the one where he doc dropped himself. And when Boiled Piss was in there with me, and we said, no, G-Man, no, stop, no. He wouldn't listen. He just refused. And so later, when she threw a big stink about it, I said, look, since you are so concerned about this, I will take it down. So it's happened multiple times throughout the years, but he has no ability to actually calm himself down anymore. So I'm not inclined to kowtow to idiocy. If he can't control himself, I'm not going to, be obliged to do anything for him. So
people repeatedly go out of their way to concede certain points to him and help him out, but that's never reciprocated. He doesn't curb his behavior in any way, shape, or form.
No,
so
he didn't.
At some point, you just kind of have to go, what the fuck's the point?
Well, it's hard too when he's closed off every avenue of communication. I mean, at the worst times, I mean, I've always had good conversation, good channel communication, with Jason Burns and Nephilim Free and Gear Up and Sable Chicken, all those people that I listed, except for Venom Fang X, which I didn't correspond with Venom Fang X, but that I know quite well, and you might be surprised to know how much of the details that didn't make it public that did sort of after a couple of years make it my way. There was significant effort to contact him personally and be like, look, come on, Sean, you're a guy where I'm a guy. Let's cool this out a little bit. And this is how human beings deal with each other. We need to have that on-air rancor and clamor. I mean, it's part of the fun. The audience likes it. It helps get their message out. It gets our message out. These are all good things. But G-Man and True Empiricism, not in sure I can talk to him. Men and True Empiricism have 100% closed off any sensible contact. I have no way to contact them if I think that there's something they need to know or something I can help with or something. Sometimes if I need to go to them and say, look, I don't like that you're doing this. Like, can we just talk about this gentlemanly? They completely shut the door on that stuff, and then they whine and complain that people don't treat them like human beings. Well, they don't act like civil grown-ups, and it's difficult. I forgot to mention too, when I was listing all the various bits of false witness, I don't endorse what the Garys did, but I want to remind people that where it all started was most people will point to G-Man's treatment of Jade. Now G-Man retells this, and Veckel totally agrees with them, that when G-Man says, well, I've asked people to give me a chance to say, oh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And all I'm hearing is, I used a sound device to make my voice louder. That's all I'm hearing. That's all I'm hearing. Are you serious? Is that seriously what he thinks people are saying to him? That's so incredibly dishonest. It's painful to hear. Obviously, a lot of the concerns came from the way he dealt with Jade, and specifically, among other things, his misrepresentation, his defamation, him saying things about Jade that were not true, him calling out Jade as a sinner for things that she was not doing. And he was told repeatedly that was not true, and he just ran with it. And then later he lied about ever having said it, right? And this is kind of what spurs a lot of this stuff, was him lying about Jade. If he would have come out and said, look, I understand that he did later say this, but if he would have said, well, I understand Jade's celibate, but in my view, she doesn't take a strong enough view against homosexuality. She should speak out against homosexuality, which is by the way, a crazy view on his part, because if his view is that you have a mistaken view about sexual morals, then you're destined for the lake of fire. That means that G-Man saying that a man is allowed to cheat on his wife as long as, to have an extramarital relationship as long as his wife knows about it. That is contra-biblical, contra-scriptural, which means that G-Man is destined for the lake of fire for having said that. So now, granted, he's repented of it. I get that, but the point is, notice that he's allowed to be wrong about one part of sexual morals, and that does not put his salvation at risk. But him saying that Jade didn't speak out against LGBT stuff means that she's destined for the lake of fire and is currently now in the lake of fire. I mean, it's such a ridiculous double standard. But that's not what he said. If he would have just said, look, Jade's got this point wrong in the Bible, he'd have had a point, and he'd have had me on board with it, because I don't think Jade had that right with what the Bible says. But what he said was that she was engaging in these relationships, that she was engaged in these what do you call it?
Practicing homosexuality.
Yeah, homosexuality.
She was a practicing
adultery.
lesbian, so she was standing around by U-Hauls and going to roller derby games and all that.
Wearing plaid and sensible shoes.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was saying that she was engaged in sexual sin, that she was engaged in homosexual adultery, and that is false witness against his sister in Christ, and he doesn't care because he always hated her. And so, okay, that's the thing that sparks the Garys into doing what they did, and in spite of many objections from many people. But does he learn from it? No, because even up to yesterday, he's saying that Hana's committed fraud. Hana's hacked his phone. Dragnut's the guy who got him fired. Dragnut's the one who's been calling. Sock account's the guy who's been calling. So let me wrap up on that point. Sam, you got anything to say?
Can I just make a
well, okay. Well, then let me just make. I want to close that point. Then let me. I just want to finish my point. Then you can go ahead. I'm not going to close the hangout. I'm not going to close the hangout. Just take it easy, Cliff. Is that that's where it starts, and that's what's always happened, and that's where it ends, is with them continuing to bear this false witness, to defame people, and to encourage other people to share in their hatred of otherwise good people. Cliff Jumper, then Sam.
You got it slightly wrong. Apparently, from what they've said, Gary Ridgway's went after him when he went after Ms. Star, threatening her on the phone.
No. They initially there was, well, I don't know if that included in the whole For Jade yelling thing, but yeah, the Ms. Star thing was the sort of more recent impetus. But yeah, they've included that in their description. But yeah, that was amongst other things. I mean, of course, taking after Ms. Star and threatening to dox her and that sort of thing. Sam, you got anything on your mind? And then we're gonna pull the plug on this. Hopefully, people have moved over to the other hangout. Check the live chat while Sam pipes in.
I think you've hit on it several times, and it's really a lot of this just comes down to the fact that he's immature, and he clearly doesn't have anyone in his life that actually calls him on that immaturity. I think that's it, because the way that I think about it, and the reason I don't get bothered when he, threatens me with a sledgehammer or makes up, like, he made up that I somehow brought a revolver to New York. I don't know how I would have gotten that through airport security. This is besides the fact I've never owned a gun. But he makes up these things so easily, and then he'll threaten people by saying, and his threats towards me have been, well, come to Jersey City, come to New York. I have to meet him there. And it's this weird mix of just immaturity and entitlement that I think, he's not capable of realizing that he's done himself in that way. And, it's kind of sad to see, but, to me, a lot of it is shame on true empiricism, shame on Veckel, the people who he goes to for this type of counseling who just cannot be real with him. And they acknowledge that he's too excitable. They acknowledge he's too reactive, and they don't do a damn thing. And
they support his lies.
Ultimately, huh?
And they support his lies. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's basically it. Is like they don't care, right? Like Ronnie honestly doesn't. He's a malicious person. Like, I think it'd be funny if G-Man hypothetically got punched in the face by a black Hebrew Israelite. I might laugh at it, but you know what? I don't want him to actually suffer. I don't. It's a funny image to put out there, but I don't want it to actually happen. Whereas for these people, I think they genuinely do want to see me suffer. They want to see drag suffer. They want to see, anyone that isn't in their group. And it doesn't come down to anything regarding religion. It's good people versus bad people.
Exactly.
On a basic level.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and I'll let people know. So within 2 minutes now is when the other hangout will be starting. I think the link has been posted a few times in the live chat. That's a great point, Sam. I want to add to it real quick. Have you noticed too that now when he makes a false accusation, he always has this weird, just absolutely bizarre get out of jail free card, because he'll say, for example, with your gun thing, he said, well, I was told that he had a gun. Well, who the fuck told him that? Who told him that that you had a gun? No, he made it up in his head, and instead of just saying, well, I suspect he had a gun, or I know he had a gun, he makes this bullshit claim, well, that's just what somebody told me. Well, who told him that? Bullshit. That's a complete lie. His other thing he's been saying lately, and again, we'll wrap up here because I think we're down to about a minute before they go live on Pew Review's channel, is that he'll say things like, well, I don't claim to have evidence for this, but I know that, whatever. And then he'll insert whatever crazy, Hana eats babies, right? And then when you call him, say, can you believe that you said that? He goes, I didn't say I had evidence for it. What? But
or
you said it.
Or to add to that line, it's another new one that he said, I've never said I believe that I'm a good person. I believe that I only deserve hellfire, but by the grace of God I'm saved. And he just uses that as an excuse to say that he can be as shitty of a person as he wants to be.
Exactly. Any single mistake made by any single non-believer is 100% rock solid evidence that all of them are 100% irretrievably evil. But a complete pattern of intentional mistakes and bad choices and just malicious conduct on their part, on a group of them at all times, is to be interpreted as, oh, well, we all fall short of the glory, we're all sinners, blah, blah, blah. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Pew Review is about to hit the button now, so swing on over there, and thanks for listening to the nonsense. Lots of fun today. See you all.